My sister-in-law licked my face and now my brother is not talking to me. Alright. I'm sorry for the title, but that's as concise as I could be about it. I am 22M and my brother is 28M. He's been engaged to his fiancée for a few months now. She is 24. My brother's fiancée is your typical spoiled party girl, and to be honest so is my brother. In the last year or so, my brother and I have had a strained relationship. This is mostly due to differences of opinion when helping take care of our mom, who is struggling with some PTSD/anxiety. She got held hostage by a man at her job, is still recovering and not back to work yet. For some context, my brother is a very impatient and opinionated person who struggles to see things outside his own perspective. He doesn't have a good grasp on mental health. He is easily persuaded by what he reads online, gets caught up in conspiracy theories, and I noticed COVID/the pandemic kind of exacerbated all of this. I work as a paramedic and he's been arguing with me about thinking I know better than him ever since. I am adopted and my bio mom was of a different ethnicity, so we don't look like brothers. When he can't think of a way to win an argument, he brings up the fact that I'm not her real son or his real brother. It wasn't always like this between us, which is sad. He's just not the same person and I'm not sure if it's work stress, life stress or what. I get that this post is going to be skewed by my perspective, but I'll try to be objective when it comes to the conflict. My birthday was last weekend, when this happened. My brother's fiancée apparently had the idea to throw me a surprise party. Most of the people there were friends of my brother and the fiancée. Everyone was drunk. They made a bit of a show of bringing me out a cake and having me blowing out the candles. Before I did that, my brother's fiancée swiped frosting on her finger and put it on my cheek. I thought it was just her being nice and not trying to smash a piece of cake in my face. I blew out the candles and after I did that, his fiancée grabbed my face and licked it. Like from my jaw all the way up the side of my face. I have no idea why she did this. We don't even have the kind of relationship where it would be funny. My brother's face changed, his demeanor changed, he became very withdrawn and irritable. They were seen, quietly, fighting and he ended up just leaving the party. I brought it up the next day to make sure he was okay and apparently the two of them made up. It's me he has an issue with. I don't know what she told him, but it seems as if I'm the one being made out to be flirting with her, wanting her, etc. Not even remotely true. I told him to leave me out of his relationship problems. It's his partner who disrespected him and embarrassed him. He's angry at the wrong person. I refuse to apologize. Apparently, I am going to be out of the wedding unless I do. He's upset because I won't admit to my mistake. Well, I don't feel like I made one. Should I just do it for the sake of settling it? Normally I'm willing to be the bigger person, but this is a false accusation I don't want attached to myself. Am I the asshole here? Update, 10 days later. After trying to reach out to my brother he finally came around and stopped ignoring me. He didn't want to talk about what happened but was willing to put it behind us. To be honest I think talking about it would have been healthier but I decided to let it go because he was so adamant. Then just the other day he came to me on his own and admit that he feels unsure about his relationship and is struggling to trust his fiancée ever since the incident on my birthday. I told him there's no rush to get married and he should take time to figure out what he's feeling. I didn't try to give any particular opinion because I feel like this is something he needs to figure out for himself. Also, I genuinely don't know what's going on between them. He still took what I said the wrong way somehow, and we ended up having an argument. He thinks I'm not happy for him and don't want to see him successful/starting a family. I tried to walk away at this point in the conversation because no matter what I said it was just going to get misconstrued, but he didn't want to stop fighting. Somewhere in that, I finally learned why he's so mad at me these days. It turns out he's pissed that our mom paid for my tuition. I've been doing OT to pay her back. Clarification, if it matters. She doesn't actually want me to pay her back, it was a gift but I'd like to pay her back slowly. My brother feels this money should have been given to him for his wedding, which I am no longer invited to. I don't really know how to fix things but that's where we're at. Stories number 2, am I the asshole? For not giving a woman a promotion at work because I saw her clap after every word when telling someone how to do something. At my company we've recently had a position come up for a supervisor in our warehouse. I wanted to promote from within so put a notice up then anyone is welcome to apply and I'll consider everyone. It's an extra £5 an hour so I had a lot of people apply. I've also been recruiting in the warehouse as it's got busy and took on another 10 members of staff. I always try and pay £5 an hour above market average to make sure I get better applicants but it also means I get a hell of a lot of applicants. Hiring these 10 people meant sifting through over 1,000 applicants. Eventually I got the 10 I wanted and I want to keep them as they are great. One of the new starters is quite a timid woman in her early 20s. On her second day she asked one of the other women who works there named Heather where to put a certain item once it had been unpacked. I was walking past when I heard Heather let out a big sigh and say, "I told you this yesterday, you to fucking learn." I was fuming. I hate it when people type like that on social media, but to hear one of my more senior employees talk to a young new starter like that on her second day really pissed me off. I told Heather I wanted to see her in my office straight away. I was honest with her and said that out of all the applicants for the supervisor role she was in my top 3 I was considering, but I will now not be considering her at all. She asked why and I told her. I said after what I just saw I believe she will be the type who would let and sort of power and authority get to her head and treat people cruelly. I said she was just asked a simple question by a new starter and she proceeded to embarrass her and belittle her in front of other co-workers, and that is not the sort of person I want supervising a team of 20. She was so angry and has since lodged a complaint saying it's unfair. She's no longer being considered for the job and she feels she's being victimized for the way she communicates. I don't think I'm an asshole for not giving her the job, but am I the asshole for telling her why she's not getting it now rather than just dealing with the applications and telling her afterwards she's not been successful? I suppose it can be seen as a bit petty of me. TLDR, saw a worker of mine being cruel to a new starter for no reason and told her that's why she isn't getting promoted. Am I the asshole? Stories number 3. Am I the asshole here for kicking out my dad after he said he couldn't afford to feed me anymore? Here's the backstory. 28M, got my own house now. Moved out at 18, not really by choice, my dad basically pushed me out. Our relationship's been rocky since then. He's always been a huge drinker and smoker, which caused plenty of issues back then. Fast forward, he lost his house a couple of months ago, didn't keep up with loan payments. So he calls me up, says he needs a place to stay while he gets back on his feet. I laid out a few ground rules: either pay rent, $400, or cover groceries, about $250 to $300, and absolutely no smoking in the house. He laughs, says, "I'm your father, I shouldn't have to pay." But I don't budge, so he reluctantly agrees to buy groceries. From the moment he moves in, it's just one problem after another. Leaves a mess everywhere, doesn't clean up, smokes inside even though I made it clear that's a no-go, and drinks like there's no tomorrow. Then, one day, I have a girl over, and he just has this meltdown over it. So I tell him, listen, if he can't respect my space, he'll have to find somewhere else to stay. Things settle for a bit, but last week, he hits me with, "I don't have the money to buy groceries this month." I'm like, why? He says, "Well, you eat a lot," and admits he spent all his cash on smokes and drinks. That was it for me. I was done with him acting like he owned the place, done with the flashbacks to dealing with him as a teen. I told him to pack up and leave. So, am I the asshole here? I set clear boundaries, he didn't follow through. Edit, I never thought my post would garner so many reactions. I'm glad I'm not TA, and thank you all for your support. I'd like to clear out a few things. No, we didn't have a formal contract when he moved in. It was oral-based. Kicking him out won't be easy, as police don't tend to offer much support to a son in relation to the father. The societal response is that a son should take care of his old parents. This was one of the reasons I agreed to take him in. Like if I could do something good for him, maybe he'd change his view about me. The feeling of being validated by my own dad after years of neglect was strong, not gonna lie. I see now how foolish it was to take him in. How I'd get him out if he refuses to leave. He would go out to buy his supplies, I'd change locks the moment he leaves, and go out too. If he breaks anything, then it's cop time. Update, October 30th, 2024. He moved out today. Sorry to disappoint y'all, but the process was surprisingly peaceful. The day of the last post, my dad told me he needed to talk. I braced myself. What he said was totally unexpected and welcome for me. He said that he couldn't bear the disrespect I've shown him, and he was never going to contact me again. His words, "You failed me as a son." I told him if he needed help in the future he could contact me, but he must abide by some conditions. He scoffed and said he was leaving soon and didn't talk to me again. He left today. As I said earlier in the first post, he had little to pack, and had most of his possessions in storage. He didn't tell me where he was going, and didn't bid adieu. Not gonna lie, I was comfortable with it. A toxic part of my life was being erased. I'm feeling a different kind of freedom, which I haven't felt even after I left home. Where he goes now is none of my concern, although I would have liked to at least know where he's going. Oh well, this is the update. Maybe a bit disappointing for this sub, but I personally am very relieved how this played out. Thank you all for the advice and all the responses, this meant a lot. Back to lurking with my main account. Peace. Stories number 4. My 38F husband, 40M, pushed me when I asked him about a weird text he received and refused to show me his phone. I am unsure what to do now. My account has a large following and my husband is one of my followers. I had to create a throwaway account to post this. I will keep it short and with few details as possible to avoid being identified. My husband and I have been married over 10 years. The last several years have been very, very difficult for us. We had been trying to conceive and failing, and this put a lot of stress on our marriage. I have been very vocal and public about our fertility struggles offline and online. After many rounds of IVF, I finally became pregnant and I am currently in my second trimester. From the beginning, the pregnancy has been really rough on me. I had severe morning sickness, high blood pressure, and my pregnancy was considered high risk. Our marriage has been under a lot of stress, and this is exacerbated by the fact that we haven't had sex once since I got pregnant, mostly because I feel completely shitty most days. Earlier today, my husband's phone kept pinging with notifications. I instinctively picked it up to see who it was messaging him. The messages were from a female friend of his. She is a relatively new friend. From what I briefly saw before he walked into the house, he had been taking out the garbage, and snatched the phone from my hands. It seemed he had been complaining about me and our sex life to this friend. I confronted him and asked him to open the message so I could read what he'd been saying about me. He got really angry and pushed me hard when I tried to take the phone back from him, and I fell on the floor. He immediately apologized and helped me get back up, and I could tell he felt really bad. When I again tried to ask him about the message, he still wouldn't show me the phone, kept deflecting, saying it was nothing. He was just complaining to a friend that the pregnancy has been difficult and that was all. I am not convinced. The texts that I saw briefly were more than what he was letting on. He refused to show me his phone for proof on the grounds of we need to have trust. I know he doesn't across that way in this post. But he really is a good, loving and supportive husband. He has never laid a hand on me, but I can't deny the uneasy feeling I have following his actions. Update, 17 hours later. Here is an update to my previous post. I planned on going to the hospital for a checkup when he was out. He caught wind of my hospital visit plans, and insisted he comes with me because he didn't want me going alone, saying he was worried about me and the baby. He was with me the entire time, so I couldn't say anything to the nurses or doctors. Baby is doing okay, but my blood pressure was high and I was recommended to go on bed rest. I am back at home now. He's been complaining and making remarks about how hard this pregnancy has been the entire time. It is incredibly frustrating to hear him complain, but after yesterday I don't want to push his buttons, so I'm keeping quiet about all of it, the phone text included. When he left to the gym, I called my OBGYN's clinic and left a voicemail explaining the truth behind my fall today. I probably won't hear back until tomorrow at the earliest. Update, 1 day later. I left and I am safe. I just wanted to start off my post with that because I know many of you are worried about my well-being. Trigger warning, if you have abuse trauma, please skip the first paragraph. After he went to sleep last night, I began gathering and packing essential documents as some of you suggested. Even though I thought I was moving quietly, he woke up and asked what I was doing. I told him I couldn't sleep, so I decided to pack essentials as I thought it might be useful in case we ever needed to go to the hospital again for an emergency. He agreed it was a good idea. But then he started going through my bag and found my passport in there and flipped out. I tried to say I was being overly cautious and pack anything we might need, but he wasn't buying it. He started yelling, asking me if I was planning on leaving him. I said no. He called me a liar. I had never seen him so angry before. I turned and started to walk away when he got in my face like I sometimes do to try and de-escalate. But, he grabbed me by the hair and neck and pulled me. Somehow, I managed to get out of his grip and ran to the bathroom, closed the door and locked it. He started banging on the door, telling me to come out, screaming obscenities and threats. He was kicking the door and trying to break it down. I didn't have my phone on me, so I couldn't call the police. The neighbors must have heard all the banging and screaming because I was told someone on the street called to report a disturbance. Eventually, the police arrived, arrested him, and took me to the hospital. I am at the hospital. I was admitted to be monitored for my blood pressure. Thankfully, my baby is okay. I have been visited by a social worker, hospital counselor, and my OBGYN, who got my voicemail and called to report it first thing this morning only to find out I was at the hospital. I was informed I got a spot at a women's shelter and will be moved there when I am discharged, and a caseworker will be assigned to me. Thank you all for your messages of support, love and kindness you've sent my way. My baby and I owe you our lives. I am typing this to explain the post's disappearance. For those who have been following my story and updates, I received a message from the mod saying I was banned for violating the community rules on the sub. I double-checked and it seems I missed the rule on posting updates 48 hours apart at minimum. I think that's why I was banned. It is unfortunate that they are gone, as there was a lot of good advice in the comments which could have been helpful to others in similar situations. Stories number 5. Am I the asshole? For planning a Disney trip without my stepdaughter and leaving her with her father, I, 41F, and my husband, 41 have 4 children. I have 1 child from a previous relationship, he has 2, and we have 1 together. We have always treated the children as equally as possible, though with extended family, they don't always go on the same trips if we don't go. His parents take his children on vacations and my child doesn't want to go without me. This has never been an issue. But when we plan trips, we always take everyone. The problem is that my SD, 16F, doesn't really like anything that anyone else does. Or she will like it until someone else does. She really wanted to go on a winter trip to Colorado for skiing. None of the other children were that excited, but seeing as it's hard to find things she likes, we went. She was excited until the other kids started enjoying it too, then she wanted to leave. This is pretty much what happens when we went on trips to the zoo, museums, anything. And if other people are already happy about it, she immediately hates the idea. We thought maybe she just wanted time with each parent alone. So we did that with both her mom and dad. She still complained the whole time. Her counselor said maybe she wants activities with both parents to show they get along. They did that, but if they show any enjoyment at all, she hates whatever they are doing. We've done girl days with her mom and I and she hates it. We have found the less enthusiastic we are, the more she wants to do it. This applies to meals too. If someone else likes something, she finds ways to criticize it. It's like she can't let anyone else enjoy anything. She also likes things more if no one else wants to do them. This also happens when she goes with her aunt and cousins. Her sister is not like this at all. We've asked her if she has any insight, their mother has too, and she comes up with nothing other than, she's just a B***** age and shrugs. We let her choose other day trips, told her she can bring her friend, but it's the same. If she sees someone like something she chose, she complains and says it was her idea like no one else can enjoy it. So this year, we had been talking about Disney for a while. My nephew has cancer and has always wanted to go with us because he has no siblings and not many friends because he's missed a lot of school. SD said it was stupid as soon as everyone else wanted to go. Her father said he would have a lot of work to catch up on when he got back. He does seasonal work and has to take the work while he can. The kids agreed that they wanted to go and he wanted us to, so I made the plans and we decided to go back another year with all of us. I made the reservations for myself, sister, nephew, and 3 of our children, deciding SD can stay back with dad since she didn't want to go anyway. My husband says ITA for not planning for her to come too, but I don't want her ruining the trip with complaints with my nephew there. Am I the asshole? Edit. To clarify, I asked SD multiple times if she wanted to go as I planned, so I would know at each stage if she had changed her mind. She was adamant every time she didn't want to go. Her dad says she always says she doesn't want to go but would regret missing out. This is based on last summer's vacation when she said she didn't want to go but loved it. We were at a campground and it rained the whole time. We were pretty miserable but she thought it was funny. Stories number 6. I guilt-tripped my wife into losing weight. My wife had always struggled with her weight, but it had gotten much worse since the birth of our son, Mark, 3 years ago. The way she viewed herself weighed on me and our relationship. I knew it was selfish, but it drove me insane that she couldn't see herself as I did, the beautiful woman I married 15 years ago. But after another long night of self-loathing and binge eating, I finally snapped. If you don't get your eating and weight under control, you won't live long enough to see Mark graduate. I immediately regretted it. I love my wife deeply, and seeing her break down because of me was unbearable. I apologized profusely, but she couldn't hear me over her own wailing. I didn't want to make things worse, so I left to stay in a hotel until things blew over. A few days later, I returned, surprised to find she wasn't angry with me. In fact, she was a whole new person, talking non-stop about a new drug all the celebrities were taking. See? Look at her, she yelled in excitement, pointing at the actress on the cover of Vanity Weekly. She's been taking it for just 2 weeks, and she looks incredible. To me, the actress looked gaunt and sickly, but if this would make my wife happy, then so be it. Over the following weeks, she lost at least 50 pounds. I barely recognized her. Skin clung to her ribcage, her cheeks hollowed, and her teeth and hair began falling out. Yet, despite everything, she had an insatiable appetite. All she did was eat, and when she wasn't eating, she'd stare at herself in the mirror, smiling and brushing the hair right out of her scalp. One night, I woke to find her sitting on the floor in the corner of our room, brushing her hair and whispering, "I'm so hungry." Over and over. Before I could react, she pounced on me, sinking her teeth into my throat and tearing away a chunk of flesh as I screamed. I tried to fend her off, but the blood loss made me weak, and that's when I turned to see Mark standing in the doorway. "Mommy." Her gaze snapped to Mark, my blood and flesh dripping from her chin as she gurgled, "I'm so hungry." She leapt from the bed, landing on Mark's little chest with a horrifying crunch, and began devouring him as she repeated, "I'm so hungry." Now, as I lie here with my hand on my throat and the world fading around me, I can't help but think I was right. She'll never see Mark graduate, and neither will I. Stories number 7. Am I the asshole here for posting receipts to family FB group that I didn't steal $26,000? My mother I have always had a rough relationship. She is very demanding and controlling. Several times in our life she has cut me off with no contact, once for 5 years, after I did not call her on her imaginary timeline. Nevertheless, in 2023, she became critically ill and was rushed near death to hospital. She has custody of my 40-years-old mentally physically handicapped nephew who is in a wheelchair. That's another example of her controlling behavior, but too long for here. My husband and I immediately drove 3 hours, to another state, and stayed at her house for the next 4 months taking care of the house, paying her bills, caring for my nephew, including bathing, toileting, and my husband went almost daily to visit her and take her things she needed, buying toiletries, clothes for P/T, and doing her laundry. She also called me at home 3 times per day to chat and give me orders of things she wanted done in her absence. I won't go into how awful she treated us once she was finally released and came home. To sum it up, a caregiver I hired to help after she came home, had known mom before, saw an opportunity and began to lie to mom and tell her that we wanted to stick her in a nursing home, which I didn't figure out until later. We had a huge fight with my mom when she made multiple false allegations which included things like we weren't properly feeding her, we weren't giving her medication, we were trying to kill her. I was devastated that despite all the evidence of my love devotion, she would accuse me of such horrible things. But I knew that she was still not well and her sugar was out of control and might be making her paranoid. I came home and tried, once again, to resign myself to living my life without my mother. This is not the first time she has tried to replace me with a stranger. It is important to note that I had been on my mother's checking savings accounts since my dad died in 2008. I had never touched a penny of my mother's money, until we moved in that January when we used her bank accounts to pay household bills and buy groceries. We were keeping my nephew, for her, providing 24-hour care, in addition to caring for her needs while in hospital. When we left her house, her savings account and checking account had essentially the same amount, within hundreds of dollars, as when we arrived. Right after we left, I checked online on my mother's bank account. I saw that the caregiver was cash apping herself money daily, in addition to using my mom's debit card and ATM withdrawals. At the time, I did not realize that SHE was the one putting crazy ideas into my mom's head. I messaged the caregiver and told her she should not be cash apping herself money. I said she should be keeping a timesheet and having mom write her paychecks, because of the IRS. She blocked me. Then, 2 weeks later, I received a phone call from a classmate who is related to caregiver by marriage. Did I know that caregiver was taking my mom to a lawyer that morning to get POA? She had been bragging about how she was going to get my parents' property after mom died. I tried to contact attorney but he would not take or return my call. Mom gave power of attorney to caregiver. They left attorney's office, went to bank and cleaned out checking savings. I reported all to police and bank. They investigated and because my mom can carry on a conversation they believed she was in her right mind. Mom is 83. Has not been making good financial decisions for some time. I also hired an attorney and was going to try for guardianship. But my mother's 2 sisters, who first told me they would help, chickened out and refused to swear that she is incompetent. Even though both had been after me for a year to put mom in a nursing home because she wasn't making good decisions and wasn't really caring for herself or my nephew. Because they backed out, lawyers said we had no chance. But kept my $2,500 retainer, even though he actually had done no work, except for a few phone calls. Anyway, after that I just resigned myself to not having a mother and to fighting for my rightful inheritance after mom dies. But then, my aunt informed me that my mother was telling people that I stole $26,000 from her. She had heard it from the local pharmacist. Because she is my mother, I will not sue her for libel. However, I did make a post in the private family Facebook group, which I created and moderate. I posted copies of mom's bank checking account showing balance prior to my coming and after, the month I left and gave her back her debit card and checkbook. I also posted screenshot of the multiple pages of items showing where caregiver had cash append herself. I stated that I had heard my mom was accusing me and here was my proof. Here's the problem, my cousin messaged me saying that I should not have posted my drama in the family group. Her reason was that there were probably people in the family who had not heard what happened. My response was that even if they didn't know all of the details, the way our family is intertwined and gossips, I am confident they heard something. And some people tend to think, if there is smoke there is fire. So I wanted to prove to everyone that I had not taken any of my mother's money. If I had wanted to, I had since 2008 to steal as much as I wanted and had never touched a penny without her say-so. Other than groceries and gas, we didn't buy anything without her permission. She had asked us to make some minor repairs around the house. My husband and I had put up smoke detectors, and replaced light fixtures on the porch and in the laundry room, bought a raised toilet seat and handrails in the bathroom. When her old recliner broke, she told us to buy another with her credit card. Everything we did was discussed prior. We didn't even ask to be paid for caring for my nephew. My husband gave him showers, shaved him, toilet, and fed him, prepared meals, washed sheets, laundry for almost 5 months. So because I am not going to take her to court for slander, I feel perfectly justified in presenting my case and proof to my family. So am I the AH? Stories number 8. Am I the asshole here for telling my daughter that she cannot continue her princess treatment? So, I'm a dad to a 16-year-old daughter, Reggie. When I say princess treatment, I mean she spends hours and hours getting ready. She wakes up at 4 in the morning, school starts at 7, just to get ready for school. If we have to go somewhere, she needs to be told at least 3 hours in advance, minimum. She spends 30 minutes picking out her outfit, an hour and a half on her hair, and another hour and a half on her makeup. It's absolutely insane. She puts so much time into her appearance. Now, I think hygiene and self-care are good, but putting this much effort into looks seems a bit much to me. Today, I wanted to go out to eat, and I'm just so fed up with her princess treatment. I didn't want to give her hours to get ready, so I told her, hey, get in the car, we're going to, restaurant's name. Reggie looked at me and asked, how much time do I have to get ready? The restaurant we were going to was like a Denny's, nothing fancy. She didn't need to get all dressed up. I said, we're going to a place where you don't have to look nice. I don't know what's up with all this princess treatment, but it has to stop. You spend hours on your appearance, and it's kind of vain. She responded, I like to look good to feel good. I told her, please, stop. I don't know who you're trying to impress. You look like a doll, and nobody likes that. Reggie just said, well, I want to look good. So I said, come on, get in the car. She didn't say anything to me, and she stayed quiet the whole time we were at the restaurant. She even acted mute on the car ride home. When we got back, she told me she was going to do her skincare and hair care routines. I don't mean to sound gross or unhygienic, but I don't even know what that is. Don't you just brush your hair and wash your face with soap and water? Maybe use a makeup remover wipe if necessary. Can someone please explain it to me? I told her she didn't need to do all that, but her routine still takes 40 minutes for her face and 30 minutes for her hair. I don't even know how she spends that long doing it. She took over the bathroom for 45 minutes, and she's still in there. I'm trying to tell her she's beautiful without all of that. It's just so frustrating, this whole princess treatment thing. Stories number 9. My 34F boyfriend, 34M, is upset that I'd consider breaking my vegetarianism during a week-long trip to Japan. How do I navigate this? My boyfriend is upset that I'd consider breaking my vegetarianism during a week-long trip to Japan. I, 34F, have been vegetarian for about 4 years. My boyfriend, 34M, is a meat lover. He is an excellent cook and he loves steak and other types of meat. He's never asked me to start eating meat. I have never asked him to stop eating meat. I don't care what he eats, it's 100% his, and everyone else's, choice. I don't talk about being vegetarian, don't promote it, and I try to figure out my own food if I need to so I don't inconvenience others. Sometimes it's hard to find a restaurant with a vegetarian choice besides a side salad, so I'll do the legwork to find a restaurant everyone will like. My choice to be vegetarian hasn't seemed to be an issue or cause any big inconvenience. But maybe I'm wrong. When I went on vacation with my boyfriend's family for a week, his mom revised her risotto recipe to use veggie broth instead of chicken broth so I could eat it. I didn't ask, I think my boyfriend suggested it to her. I was really appreciative. When my boyfriend and I went on vacation for a week, we both looked up restaurants that would have a veg option for me. We mostly ate at seafood places because of where we were vacationing, and I managed to find a veggie burger or something like that at most places. My take, I have a work trip to Japan coming up soon. I told my boyfriend I was considering eating meat during that week so I can fully experience the culture and food. That means sushi, wagyu, ramen, things like that. I'm not sure if I can actually get myself to eat meat during the trip because I think I'll feel guilty about it. My choice to be veg is because I feel bad for how animals are raised, treated, farmed, and the nature of how they're usually killed. I know I can get humanely raised meat but I choose to abstain altogether. I miss sushi and steak the most, but again, I abstain. My boyfriend's take, he is upset that I would consider breaking vegetarianism for this week-long trip, but I wouldn't consider breaking vegetarianism to have a steak with him. It makes him feel like he's not worth it. It makes him feel like the trip and the coworkers I'm going on the trip with are more important than him. I know he bonds over sharing food with people, he likes to cook for other people. And he's never been able to cook a steak for me, and we've never been able to share a steak dinner together. We've gone to steakhouses before, but I just eat whatever else they have. It's not the same as us both enjoying a steak. He also said that all the effort to accommodate me being vegetarian seems like a waste now, his mom going out of her way to make the risotto without chicken broth, looking up restaurants where I can eat something besides a salad, him cooking stir-fry or other dishes and leaving the meat separate on the flat top grill until I serve myself the veggies, and then after that he combines it all together with the meat, things like that, me not being able to enjoy the best shrimp he's ever had on our vacation together. He was to the point of tears over us not being able to eat a steak together. I understand it would make him feel bad that I'd consider eating meat on the trip, but I haven't offered to eat a steak with him. I feel terrible for making him feel this way and making him feel less important or less worthy. I apologized for this and apologized for making him feel this way. I told him that's not it, it's not that he's not worthy, that this trip is probably once in a lifetime, and I'm afraid that if I have a steak here at home with him I'm concerned it'll become a slippery slope. I told him I don't want to stop being vegetarian. How do I navigate this? Editing to add. When he told me how he felt about this I listened, apologized for making him feel so poorly, and validated him. I understand why he feels bad, and I should have thought about how this might go before I said it, that I'm considering eating meat on the trip, out loud. During the conversation I thanked him for telling me how he was feeling and thanked him for telling me how important that would be to him. So I offered to have a steak with him, and I also let him know I don't want it to become a regular thing because I prefer to stay vegetarian, or mostly vegetarian I guess, since having steak with him wouldn't be vegetarian. I know sharing meals together is important to him. It's also important to me. What I did not know, however, is that he was so badly wanting to have a steak together where I eat it, too. When he cooks meat I always comment on how good it looks and smells, and he has said before, I wish you could taste this. In hindsight, that comment from him was probably hinting at him wishing I'd offer to eat a steak with him. He hasn't asked me, hey, can you please eat a steak with me tonight, or would you ever consider eating meat with me or for me? If he asked me those questions and I said no, and then I said I'm considering eating meat in Japan, that would be a different conversation. I haven't rejected him that way, but I also haven't offered to eat steak with him either until this conversation came up. I didn't know this specific thing was something he wanted so badly. I thought because he eats meat as much as he wants and we eat many meals together that he was satisfied in this area. We've never been to a vegetarian restaurant together. I try to make my vegetarianism as small as possible, I don't want it to be a thing. I bring food to his house, I get a side salad or kids grilled cheese at restaurants that don't have any other veg options. I don't make it a big deal. I completely understand why he feels bad. That's not what this post is about. I'm just wondering how to best move forward. I also just told him I was considering eating meat on that trip without thinking about it first. I didn't think about how he'd feel slighted. I didn't think about how I'd feel guilty and anxious about the thought of actually going through with eating meat, etc. When we talked about it, I brought up that I'll have to slowly incorporate meat into my diet leading up to us having a steak together or to going to Japan if I choose to eat meat on that trip. I know that's a thing. Considering how anxious I feel about actually thinking more about going through with eating meat, I think it's best for me to just not eat meat on the trip. But now I still have to figure out how to address the topic with my boyfriend because now I know he wants me to eat steak with him, and I offer to do that for him. Thanks for all the feedback, everyone. Update October 30th, 2024. Here's what happened. This is going to be really long. During the 2 weeks leading up to me leaving for Japan, we got into a couple big arguments, and about 5 days before I left, he told me he can't do it anymore. He can't take all the arguing, he's exhausted, I don't take responsibility for the things I'm doing wrong, and all I do is focus on what he's doing wrong. I don't talk enough about the things that I need to fix about myself, I don't talk about my insecurities enough, and I don't take enough responsibility for the ways I communicate poorly and how that makes us fight. A little more context about the arguments. Argument 1. We had a talk one Sunday about how I was feeling. He could tell I was down, and I told him I was feeling lonely. He asked how else I'd been feeling lately and I shared that I've also been conflicted about some work stuff and some family and friend stuff. We didn't talk about the loneliness, just about the other things. He went into solution mode and was emotionless about it. It wasn't what I needed, but I went through that process with him first since he seemed determined to get to the bottom of it. Throughout the discussion, a couple things rubbed me wrong way. First, he told me he doesn't think I actually feel that way. And second, there was no empathy. When he was done leading that discussion, he asked me how I feel. I told him poorly. The first thing I shared is that it's disheartening when he asks me how I feel, I tell him how I feel, and then he replies with I don't think you feel that way. This isn't the first time this happened. Other times when he's asked me how I feel or what I think about something, he's told me, I don't believe you. I don't think you feel that way. It doesn't make sense to feel that way. I think you feel like that because of XYZ, not because of the reason I gave him. The second thing I shared is that I would have liked him to not only focus on analyzing the situation and to say something empathetic like, "Ah babe, that sucks, you feel so lonely. I'm sorry to hear that. What's going on?" I told him I appreciated the solution mode discussion and that helped, and I also needed some empathy. He got quiet and his body language changed. I asked him if he's upset. He firmly replied, "Yeah, I'm upset." I asked why and he said because I'm only focusing on the things he did wrong. He tried so hard to handle the situation well and he did everything else right, but all I told him is what he did wrong. I reminded him he did other things right. And I referenced back to other conversations where he has shared a grievance with me and I haven't given him what he wanted in the moment. He wanted more empathy or more softness, for example, and he's quick to point it out and tell me what I'm not doing right and what he needs from me. This conversation kind of ended after that. I brought it up again a week or so later and he said sorry for not handling it well. Argument 2, he told me he was making plans to watch a horror movie with his friend, Aaron. They periodically watch movies together, just the two of them, and that's fine by me. However, this made me feel insecure this time because I don't feel like he gets excited to make plans with me, really tries to make or initiate plans with me, besides just hanging out at home or something or saying we should go to the brunch place we like nearly every weekend. Anyway, I got really quiet and started tearing up in the moment, and I was trying to process how I felt and figure out if it's worth bringing up or if I just need to handle it on my own and not tell him how I was feeling, because I know it's an insecurity of mine. He asked me what's wrong and I decided this is benign enough to talk about. I told him this made me feel really insecure. He told me it doesn't make sense for me to feel that way, I shouldn't feel that way, and he's never done anything to make me feel that way. I explained myself and explained why. He loves horror movies and I want him to want to share that with me and I feel insecure about it. If the rest of our relationship was healthy, this probably would not have made me feel poorly, but I had been feeling not really wanted for a while, so this kind of tipped the scale. He persisted that it doesn't make sense for me to feel this way and listed reasons why I shouldn't feel that way. Eventually he said okay and he understood what I was saying. He asked me if I felt heard and I said yeah, I think so. Then he wanted a chance to say his perspective. He went right into how it doesn't make sense for me to feel that way, why I shouldn't feel that way, and that he's never done anything to make me feel that way. I got so frustrated because that contradicted what I thought we just resolved when he said he understood my feelings. He got upset because I was bothered about it again after I just told him I felt heard. He said he wanted softness from me and I wasn't receiving him well. We went back and forth after that, me trying to explain why his responses to me were bothering me, and him insisting the same things again. It never got resolved. Argument 3. I was leaving for Japan on a Friday night, my flight was at like 7 p.m. That same day he was going to drive about an hour away to spend the weekend with his best friend. We talked a few weeks prior and I said I wasn't going to work that day so I could prepare for the trip, and we agreed we'd hang out that day but never firmed up any plans or times. We went out to dinner and I asked him what time he was planning to leave on Friday to drive to his friend's house. It was a genuine question with no feelings or anything attached. He replied between 3 and 5 p.m. I don't know what I was expecting him to say, but when he told me 3 to 5, I realized I felt bad because I wanted him to want to spend that time with me leading up to my flight, and maybe take me to the airport or something. I never expressed this to him previously. We didn't talk about it yet. But in that moment, I told him I felt unconsidered and I wished he would have considered me. I screwed up because I should have told him I wanted to hang out leading up to my flight instead of saying I felt unconsidered, but at the same time I don't know if I would have felt comfortable telling him that because it would interfere with his friend time and change his plans. I'm not sure how he would have received that. Maybe well, maybe not. He got really upset. I tried explaining why I felt unconsidered, and immediately his body language changed. He pushed himself back in his chair a little, made this smirk, scoffed, and started interrupting me. I got frustrated and heated and told him not to interrupt me when I was trying to explain my feelings, and I can see he's about to get defensive. I was definitely triggered by his change in demeanor and his attempt to interrupt me. I thought to myself, not again, not this time. Stand up for yourself and make sure you get to share your feelings. He got even more upset that I assumed he was going to get defensive, and he got upset I wouldn't let him interrupt me. He said he did consider me, his plan to leave between 3 and 5 wasn't firm, and if I just let him interrupt me, this big fight wouldn't have happened. He said my feelings weren't appropriate because they were based on an incorrect assumption I made. The assumption I made was that he didn't consider me, and that his plans to leave between 3 and 5 were firm. He told me he just pulled that time frame out of the air and it wasn't firm. He didn't have dinner plans with his friend yet so it was all flexible. When he explained himself I thanked him for explaining it, I apologized for assuming he didn't consider me, and I told him I see his perspective. He was really upset with me though. So he explained again why what I did wasn't okay. It wasn't okay that, 1, I assumed he didn't consider me, 2, I said, I wish you would have considered me, 3, I called out his body language, and 4, I assumed he was going to get defensive. Side note, me saying I wish you would to him is a no-no because it makes him feel awful, so I have worked hard to not use that phrase with him. I failed this time. I explained that those were my feelings based on the information I had at the time, and even though they were based on wrong information, it's still okay for me to tell him how I feel first, and then he can set the record straight. Then he can say something like, oh, these plans aren't actually firm. Sorry you didn't feel considered. The plans are flexible. And I can say, okay, sorry for assuming that. I'd like to hang out up until I go to the airport. That didn't work for him. He insisted that if I just let him interrupt me none of this would have happened. I ended up reiterating his point and apologizing 3 times. Also, over the summer, something similar happened with the roles reversed. He assumed something incorrect and he was upset about it, and I interrupted him to tell him what the correct information was. And he told me I need to hear him out first before I chime in with the correct information, because his feelings are still his feelings and they should be heard. It's hard to do, but I agreed. So I brought up that conversation as justification for why I should be allowed to tell him how I feel before he interrupts me. He still wanted to interrupt me because my assumption was wrong. Then he got upset that I changed my stance so quickly. When he told me the plans were flexible, I apologized for assuming he didn't consider me and I told him okay, I understand, that works for me. He said he feels crazy when this happens, when I feel bad about something, he explains his side, and then I say okay, I understand and I let my original feelings go and I side with him. He said that I'm gaslighting him because it seems like a big deal to me, then he gets worked up, and then I back down. I tried to explain that it's normal and healthy for someone to be told new information and then take that information into consideration, and change their approach. It's healthy for me to hear him out and say, yeah, I made an assumption and I shouldn't feel bad about this anymore. Anyway, he was really upset with me all night. The whole fight was because of my poor communication. When we woke up the next morning, I thought he was going to apologize to me. Apparently, he thought I was going to apologize to him. That's when he told me it's over. TLDR, he broke up with me. I'm back from a Japan work trip. I didn't eat meat or seafood on the trip. I did have some soups made with fish broth since that was tough to avoid and that made me feel sick, but overall it went very well. I'm struggling now with the breakup. Stories number 10. The right to not freeze my tush. Back in the dark ages my town public schools required females to always wear a dress or a skirt and blouse, even in the snowy New England winters. Froze my tush walking 1/3 mile to the bus stop and standing there waiting. Boys were supposed to wear dress pants and collared shirts. In high school, student lockers were in the school corridor, and the rules said we needed to remove coats, boots and other outdoors/weather gear there before entering the other rooms. So I and some other female students hatched a plan. When it got cold we wore pants to school under our skirts, and removed them while standing or sitting in the public corridor. Teachers and principal got upset, but warm pants, corduroy, lined, wool etc., were specifically listed in the manual. They were of course thinking of the boys, qualified as weather gear. When they said to go to a bathroom to change, I pointed to the student rulebook saying weather gear had to be removed before entering the other rooms. More and more girls copied us, and they hated girls maybe accidentally flashing underwear while changing. It could even accidentally happen pulling down pants, worn over skirts, and pants crushed the required neat appearance of the skirts, so we won the battle. Pants instead of skirts were allowed all day in winter, which we then stretched to rainy days in spring, half the days, in MA, and finally they gave up. We could choose to wear pants any day, which soon devolved to jeans and such for everyone. Stories number 11. Told my husband, 34M, I, 30F, wouldn't have children in the USA and gave him the ultimatum that we would either move or divorce or be child-free. How do I explain why I'm being like this? I am a dual citizen in the USA, my husband is American. And we have been talking about having children, but the unrest from the election has really changed my mind about having children here ever. No matter the outcome. His is not a financial issue, either. I am decently well off from my work. I am an engineer. The issue is, this country literally terrifies me right now. It's not the country I moved to in college. It's horrifying and every day I talk to anyone or walk down the street and see someone talking about their political affiliation here it makes me seize up. I feel like I'm my great-grandma watching Hitler come into power. She described the realization to me once and man it feels eerie. And honestly, it doesn't matter who wins. It's that we're surrounded by people whose views disturb me at this point. We're in red. I've already began looking at houses in Canada. I've been telling my husband for a while, 3 years, that I don't think I want to live here anymore. But tonight I put my foot down, and told him I don't want to have children here ever. It is honestly a deciding factor. I don't want to raise children here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be pregnant here. He just kept saying, why are you being like this, but I don't know how to explain it better. Stories number 12. My friend is blaming me for everything wrong in her life. Am I the asshole? I, 20F, recently had a falling out with my friend, K, 24F. She's been a close friend for years, but I feel like lately she's been putting way too much blame on me, and some of our mutual friends, for things going wrong in her life. Here's what happened recently. K is really into makeup, and she offered to do a trial for me as a favor. We had planned a time, but I ended up being late and didn't communicate well about it, something I'm completely willing to own up to, and I apologized to her for wasting her time. However, her response felt really extreme. She sent me a long message saying that my actions created a domino effect that ruined her whole night, stopped her from finishing her schoolwork, caused her to have panic attacks, and even impacted her marriage because she couldn't spend time with her husband. She even said that she felt so bad she needed to book a therapy session, and that she wouldn't be able to come to my birthday party because of it. I told her I was sorry for the miscommunication and my lack of punctuality, but I also mentioned that it felt unfair for her to make me responsible for everything going wrong in her life. Now she's saying I'm overstepping her boundaries and accusing me of not respecting her time. This isn't the first time she's acted this way, though. A few weeks ago, she confronted me and 2 other friends because she felt left out, saying we don't hang out with her as much as we do with each other. The truth is, Kay's often busy with school and midterms, so she hasn't been able to come to things anyway. One specific thing she mentioned was that she felt hurt we had a doctor's appointment together without telling her, but we actually had mentioned it in our group chat. She recently had an IUD inserted and was on bed rest, so we didn't want to bother her, thinking she'd need rest. When she explained why she felt left out, it turned out her husband was also busy at that time and wasn't able to be there for her as much, so she was upset that we hadn't checked in on her either. It made me feel like she sometimes relies on us to fill in the gaps when things are rough with her husband. It's starting to feel like she's using me, and others, as a bit of a scapegoat whenever she's feeling low, and it's exhausting. I do feel bad about wasting her time with the makeup thing, but at this point, I feel like I'm carrying a lot of her emotional baggage and being held responsible for things I didn't cause. Am I the asshole for pushing back and saying I don't think I'm fully responsible for her issues? Stories number 13. Bag thief. So today I went to the grocery store to pick up some drug refills and essential groceries. As the store charges for using their bags, I have my own reusable, insulated bags from CA Innovations. As these are pricey, I have my name and the last 6 numbers of my car's VIN printed on the bottom using a paint pen. While at the RX, I put my cart to one side out of the way of the feeder line to the RX counter. After I get the drugs, and turn back to my cart, I notice that the bags aren't in my cart and a woman is walking off with them sitting on her stuff. I run after her, and grab my bags out of her cart. She starts screeching about someone stealing her bags. I told her I was happy to wait for store management, since the camera at the RX counter should have caught her taking them from my cart. As an employee had seen what I did, and, presumably, run for a manager, I let her screech first about my theft. Then about how she needed them more than me, since I had nothing in my cart. As I could see a manager approaching, I told her if she was still there when he arrived I would inform him wanted to press charges for petit larceny, and pointed out that the bags had my info printed on them, so there would be no question as to who the thief was. She went away, and I waited for the manager. When he asked what the yelling was about, I told him the woman was mad I had caught her stealing my reusable bags. He thanked me, and walked off in the same direction she had gone. Stories number 14. I fucked up. I genuinely might delete this the next hour, or even minute after I post it. But I have to get this off my chest. I, 14M, have been recorded masturbating in the school bathroom. This is not a joke post. If any of this sounds satirical or ingenuine, it is due to the genuine state of hysteria in which I am inflicted. As you can probably guess, I had shamefully done the act of masturbating in the bathroom of my school. As I am writing this, I've fully realized and am disgusted that my addiction has reached such a point. Unknowingly, I had been recorded doing the deed, and the video is apparently spreading across the school. I have not seen the video. I can barely handle looking in a mirror now, let alone looking my sinful actions to the face. But it's only a matter of time, until I'd say, tomorrow that the footage is spread across the school, therefore likely ruining my life. I would like to end this confession with a notice. I hold no resentment to whoever it may be that recorded me. This is my fault, and my fault only. It is completely my fault that I had committed such a repulsive act, and this situation is only the consequence of my actions. Although my life for the next 4 years or more may be ruined, I am not implying that this is anyone's fault but my own, and that this event is anything more than a mere consequence. Honestly, it's stupid that I would even make a post about this. But I have genuinely been losing my mind over it and I had to get it out somewhere. I may delete this instantaneously. Who knows? But alas, thank you for hearing my heinous tale. Stories number 15. I can't move. My girlfriend is sleeping on my chest, her dad's 17-years-old cat is sleeping on my legs, and her 4-years-old kitty is sleeping on my ankles. I cannot move. I am claustrophobic, got 3 warm-blooded beasts baking me alive with their combined body heats after I gave all 3 of them some good scritches. The dog also did a blitzkrieg of love and assaulted me for scritches and kisses, she's a chunker. Missiled toward my face the sped off into darkness. The fan is off, my legs are sweating. This is my penance. I met her cats 4 days ago, and she had warned me they are grumpy, especially the 17-years-old, he eats all other 4 cats' food, as well as the dog's. He's an asshole, chooses random beds to piss on, and could not be healthier, according to his vet. I suspect he'll live to be 30. 86 hours later and they are all over me. I cannot move. But honestly, I don't want to move. This is all I've ever dreamed of. Stories number 16. Am I the asshole? For answering my coworker's question about why her kid was doing something. Okay, so this happened a few years ago at me. Last company. I was F35 at the time. My coworker was AF34, so about same age as I and openly gay. No judgment, I'm sure this is relevant to situation. Let's call this coworker T. T talks about her personal life, and everyone else's, at work often. One day the subject was her 10-year-old son and why suddenly she no longer had to fight with him to get him to take a shower. Recalling my own childhood, I said maybe he likes a little girl at school whom he wants to smell nice for, or a boy, I don't know. Her response was an annoyed why would it be a boy? I said you know why it might be a boy. She seemed very agitated by this and said that children don't know anything about that. I told her I was only 6 when I had my first crush on a boy. She argued some about kids needing to be 18 before they announce their sexuality, how do they know, etc. She went to HR and said I spoke about her minor son's sexuality and had no business even bringing up that idea. I told HR exactly what was said and wasn't penalized for it. After this incident and I never got along again. In fact it was the opposite. She teamed up with another coworker we worked with and they reported any and everything on me. Even dumb things like a funny story about my accidentally kneeing my husband on the bum when we were trying to sleep. I thought for a long time that I wasn't in the wrong, but with the hell that they rained on me afterwards it made me wonder. Was I the dirty brown eye? Stories number 17. My coworker has it out for me, so my revenge was to do her a favor. I wanted to tell my story of potentially the least effective or potentially most effective petty revenge I performed. I'm a 29F, bartender working at a small but very popular pub. I've worked there for over 3 years and have worked my way up to the shifts I want, so I often work 5 to 6 days a week. I worked 6 days straight closing the bar. Which is a lot because unless it's Friday or Saturday I work alone, and we have to clean the entire place, sweep, mop, clean the toilets etc. It's busy and I can sell anywhere between $1,000 to $3,000 a night. One time $3,700 with a busser, but other than that always alone, no help. Server, bartender, host, food runner. Anyways, I close that final night, I do the entire checklist as usual and leave the place clean as I always do. The next day the opener sent out a message around 1 p.m. that said, there was a full case of the Pinot upstairs. 1.5 bottle in the fridge. I have a bottle on ice for a couple that specifically came in for the Pinot. If we are super low stock, have a quick gander upstairs. This employee gets 1 shift a week. She has proven to not be the strongest and completely has it out for me. Stocking the wine is a day shift job. When she got there at 11:30 a.m. she could have taken a gander in the fridge and stocked accordingly. So here is the petty revenge. I question whether this was actually revenge or just satisfying to me. So if I close and know she's opening I will put the chairs up, and we don't put the chairs up. But even though putting the chairs up is annoying as hell, if she's gonna complain about my close then I better do a thorough job. When we worked the next time together she acted like I didn't exist. Like I wasn't there. I didn't do anything. That's what bothered me the most. Then guess who needs a shift covered that weekend? Her, of course. So who took me? Me, of course. I felt satisfied with the fact that as much as she wants to hate me there I was to help her out. So, is that even petty revenge? You tell me. Stories number 18. What are your thoughts on the bed rotting trend? I don't use TikTok, but I recently read an article about a TikTok trend called bed rotting. The idea is to spend an entire day in bed, intentionally resting and giving yourself permission to do nothing. It's based on the belief that Western society often undervalues rest, and we could all benefit from being more in tune with our body's needs. However, there's some debate within the medical community about the potential physical and mental health consequences of staying in bed all day. That being said, I decided to try it myself. For 3 days, I essentially stayed in bed and did nothing. I had planned to be productive, but as soon as I had a long weekend available, my body seemed to say, absolutely not. I felt so fatigued that even moving was difficult, and I experienced a lot of muscle twitching in my face and head, probably from stress and overuse. But after my bed rot, I experienced the best mental focus I've had in about 2 months. Today, I feel energized and ready to tackle my to-do list, including getting a workout in. It felt like my body was overdue for a major reset, the kind where you're forced to turn off your device for hours to perform a necessary upgrade, even though it's inconvenient. If I find that my body needs this kind of rest a few times a year, I'm all for it. Considering how controversial the topic of bed rotting is, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you tried it or would you consider it? Stories number 19. 27-year-old pizza delivery driver. Feel like a loser. I'm 27. I make decent money working at Domino's, but I guess I want a normal life. 9 to 5, weekends off, no working late nights or weekends. I recently went on a date with a woman and she asked what I did for a living and her entire mood changed. She didn't say anything about my job, but I knew what it was about. I have a worthless associate's degree in mathematics. I know the tech industry is flooded, so I've thought about electrical engineering. I know engineering is much harder and lower paying, but you can't offshore engineers. I used to work with my dad in high school doing construction, so trades are out of the question. I don't know. This isn't the life I expected being almost 30. Stories number 20. Tea on Abhishek. As the Flair says, this is unverified and third-hand gossip, so take it with a grain of salt. Right now almost all Bollywood pages, be it Insta Reels, YouTube Shorts or Twitter, are talking about Abhishek's separation. The entire tide is pro-Aishwarya and anti-Abhishek. The rift in their relationship was due to several issues, and family interference and insecurity played a huge role in it. But Abhishek probably did not cheat on Aishwarya, at least not with Nimrat Kaur. Abhishek is very angry at the fact that the separation is at the limelight right now and almost everyone blames him. His PR is soon going to start a slew of pro-Abhishek posts to try to sway public opinion. So brace yourself, for Abhishek is a green flag posts from everyone and their father. Stories number 21. Am I the asshole? For neglecting my partner's feelings after he dismissed mine. I, 24F, and my boyfriend, 23M, have been together for almost 4 years. We've had our ups and downs, but I'm starting to wonder if I'm the AH in this situation. Last week, my boyfriend went on a week-long trip for a certification course. There was a girl in his class who I suspected might be flirting with him. I told him, I feel like she's flirting with you. Please either bring me up or put some distance between you two. She was getting personal and physical with him, which made me uncomfortable. My boyfriend brushed it off each time, saying, this isn't a big deal. I don't see why this is bothering you so much. On the last day, she high-fived him, only him, and congratulated him. I was upset, but he insisted there was nothing to worry about. I trusted him, but the way he kept dismissing my feelings hurt. For context, he's uncomfortable with me being affectionate with males who are not family/the one friend I had during college, and I've always respected his boundaries. So, it felt like he wasn't doing the same for me, or at least not showing enough concern about how I felt. We argued about this, and he said he'd never take another course if it meant I'd keep bringing it up. I trust him, but it was the way he dismissed my feelings that hurt, especially since I had been open about how uncomfortable I was. Here's where I might be the AH. Today, we argued in Walmart because I misspoke while giving him directions to find a snack. I said, my right, when we were both facing the same way. It was autopilot. I usually say, my right/my left, at work, and I apologized. But he kept pressing, and I said, this isn't a big deal. I don't see why this is bothering you so much. I probably shouldn't have said that, but it wasn't that I didn't care. I just didn't understand why it was such a big issue when it really just seemed like a minor miscommunication. He accused me of not caring about his feelings and neglecting him. I was frustrated and let my words slip. When we got home, he asked me to leave him alone. 2 hours later, he came into my office to ask if I thought I'd been on my best behavior. I was caught off guard and said we both could have done better, but he said, no, specifically you. I asked if he wanted a girlfriend who was submissive and on her best behavior 24/7, and his answer was yes and no. I asked him if he thought he neglected my feelings during our argument about the girl from his class, and he said that that was different. That this wasn't about him, but that it was about me. That threw me off, and I went for a walk. I've always listened to his feelings, even during tough fights. But now I'm wondering if I actually might have been dismissing his feelings the same way he's dismissed mine. I don't want to ignore his needs, but I'm feeling like my own feelings keep getting overlooked. So, am I the asshole for neglecting my partner's feelings after he did the same to me? Edit/context. Hi everyone. I just want to say thank you to everyone who commented on his first. I have been trying to read all of the comments, but there's a lot, so it's taking me a while. I just wanted to edit this to add some more context/information. The girl I'm referencing in this post is not a colleague of his. His company paid for the course and her company paid for her course. They are strangers to one another, so it's not like I'm trying to take away a relationship with a colleague. I see a few comments, criticizing the high 5 aspects of the story more so my feelings towards it. I just want to clarify that it was not the high 5 that I'm upset about. I could genuinely care less that it was a high 5. If she hugged him or kissed him on the cheek, I would say that that is what I was upset about. But a high 5 is a high 5 and I genuinely didn't care. My feelings are more stemming from the fact that I asked him to put some distance between them and it didn't really seem like my feelings were taken seriously or my request were taken seriously. I've seen a couple people ask if I really trust him or say that he might be projecting cheating, and I would just like to clarify that I do genuinely trust my partner. I've only had one other issue with someone, but that was more so because of his mother, not anything he did. That's a whole different story. I am not insecure in my relationship and I'm very secure in myself. I don't think I'm going to take those comments and run with them without definitive proof of something like that happening. Another reason why I do not suspect him of cheating is because immediately when he would leave class, he could call me and he would be the one to push doing FaceTime sleepovers while he was gone. I think a couple of people have taken his feelings towards me having male friends a little differently, and that's probably on me. I probably could have worded it better. He has no problems with me showing affection towards male family members or the male friend I had while in college, who he knows and likes. Give you more so doesn't want me hanging out with emails. He hasn't vetted yet. I understand his reasoning behind this for a few reasons. 1. Both his parents are serial cheaters, and he has seen them be inappropriately affectionate with other people who are not each other. And 2. The last time I hung out with a male he hadn't met was a couple months into our relationship when a male I considered a friend sat me in my dorm room. I'm not going out of my way to be friends with male because of my feelings towards unknown men, not because of him. Stories number 22. Am I the asshole here for being frustrated and disgusted in what my sister and Bil did, so I did something for my niece? I'm an auntie and I never want kids. Me and my husband went over to my big sister's house about 2 weeks ago and she has 4 kids. My homegirl Legacy, 13F, and then my nephews Leon, 4, Leo, 4, and Landon, 3W. Legacy just turned 13 2 weeks ago. When it was time for the party absolutely none of her friends came. It was only her cousins, ages 8 to 4 years old, and I was pissed because yes, cousins can come, but what about her friends? Her cousins are literally still under the age of 10 and most of them are boys and they don't even spend time with her anymore because she's older to them. She has maybe 3 best friends she wanted to invite, she told me. Legacy didn't have any fun whatsoever. Her mom had a ball pit for little kids, a small water slide, one of those inflatable water slides for small kids. It was hell, I tell you, hell. In the goodie bags my sister put in a whole bunch of kid stuff in there, and I promise to God I almost peed on myself from being disturbed by the fact that she had a damn mini Mickey Mouse mini drawing pad in there. And not only did she have baby stuff in there, Legacy didn't even get a goddamn bag. Yeah, it got baby stuff in there, but at least let her have a fucking bag. Legacy couldn't even do anything there cause her mom had her taking care of her brother. She put one candle into the back, which was confusing to me because she's 13 not 1. But then she blew the candle out and then my sister put another one on and she told the kids to line up and they all blew out the candles and I was fucking damned. Out this world, like if she don't get her fucking shit together I swear. But then I left because I so pissed. So I did what I did best, and took matters into my own hands. Me and my husband were so mad at my sister that we decided that we were gonna be the responsible and intelligent adults and give Legacy what she really wanted. We moved the furniture in a room and we added pillows, blankets, squishmallows, Legacy's favorite snacks. I had a nail play set up, and I bought us some girly pajamas and me, her, and her friend, not the boys, had a great time. Then the next day my husband took her and her friends, including the boys, to a skating place and we two then to go eat. It was the best. My sister and Bil was mad that we didn't do a with the smaller kids and just did the bigger kids. I told her that what she did 2 weeks ago was shitty and very immature of her and she said that I was a terrible auntie. Me and my husband has been talking about taking Legacy in our home. I simply told them that even though they have a newborn and 2 toddlers she still deserves the attention and love. I told them I could understand if they couldn't do something big for her birthday. Then they just laughed and I was confused as hell. They said having toddlers, newborn, money has nothing to do with it. They said that they asked the boys what they wanted at her party and they did it so they did feel excluded. Legacy wanted a girly-type party, spa-themed party. My sister said that Legacy wanted just her friends there and not little kids, and they told me that she said the reason why is because Legacy said that whenever they're around they intentionally either hit her or break something of hers and thinks it's funny. I told her that it made sense why she didn't want them there. My sister said that the boys are her first priority right after her husband. I am not finna lie. I kinda hate my sister for this cause she should know not to leave someone out, let alone her own daughter. She left me out all the time and I felt so excluded, but then again I was that annoying little sister so I understood, but Legacy isn't me and she doesn't even hang out with the younger boys as much anymore because of what they do. Me and my husband are really thinking about taking Legacy from her. And she even said that she didn't care as long as she babysits the baby at night. Stories number 23. Am I the asshole? For refusing to let my wife spend my money on her best friend. My wife has known her best friend since middle school. Her friend is a lawyer and her family is quite well off. She makes a lot and is pretty generous with it. My wife has had a few things paid for by her. Specifically, she covered my wife's portion of her bachelorette trip. The other friends didn't make much and so she covered it. She also paid for a portion of my wife's rent twice and she normally pays the bills if she and my wife go out for food. This friend is now marrying a doctor and I don't think they have any trouble with paying for anything they want. My wife is a som and I'm a mechanic. I bought home a bonus of $3,000 and when I told my wife she immediately started talking about getting her friend a really expensive necklace from this brand she knows her friend really wants. She showed me and the cheapest necklace is $2,000 on the website. She insisted I should spend the bonus on a wedding gift for her friend. I shut her down and told her it's my bonus and she really cannot expect me to buy her friend something this expensive. I don't think wedding gifts even exceed $100. She began fighting with me saying I buy lunch out of the house and I have stupid hobbies that cost a lot of money, so why can't she spend some money like buying her friend a necklace? I do spend a bit on my hobbies and I have 2 cars, but I also work my ass off and her friend can definitely pay for it herself. She is marrying a doctor and they already have a house whereas we are still renting. I told her she is being insane and she insists we sit down and tally up everything I spent on myself in the last year and if it's higher than $2,000 I should pay for the necklace. I think it's ridiculous to compare the two and I'm refusing to let her buy her friend a ridiculously expensive gift. She insists her friend has spent a lot on her and I also saved money because her friend pays for meals and activities whenever they hang out so she doesn't have to spend our money. I get that the lopsided relationship isn't the best, but then she should refuse to do anything that costs too much and let her friend decide if she wants to just hang out without doing anything that costs money. She refuses to talk to me now and I'm wondering if I'm the asshole here. Stories number 24. My best friend did something awful to my partner so I sought revenge at his wedding. There he was. My best friend. Walking down the aisle with a big, shit-eating grin on his face. He looked so happy, but all I could think of was Anya's last words. Make him pay. Please. For what he did to me. I felt that familiar feeling of intense revulsion and anger rising, but somehow, I suppressed it. I stared John down and smiled. And in a way, the smile felt genuine, because I was going to spoil everything. Quickly, and with little suspicion. Using a vial my wife had kept in her travel bag. We'd all been Marines once, but after our first tour, she and John had been fast-tracked. Both were smart. Brilliant. Deadly. Natural-born spies. But Anya was special. Multilingual and a brilliant impressionist, she could do almost any accent, despite her Belarusian lilt. Exiting the church, I watched the couple get into their car to a chorus of whoops and cheers, the air still heavy with drifting confetti. Like blossom in spring. The cancer had torn her apart so quickly. When the nurses came to change her sheets, I'd reposition her cuffs and lift her off the bed with ease. Make him pay. For what he did to me. And then, in a heartbeat, I was standing up, giving the best man speech. Keep it together, I chided. John is. Hell, you know who John is, I fumbled, my tone faltering. A yawning silence filled the marquee. I could feel my palm sweating against the mic. I had the 2 glasses ready. One for him, one for me. John is, I squirmed. A hero. My hero, a toast. I cried, passing the glass to John as I raised mine high. To the happy couple. An hour later, it started to hit him. Hard. He's just pissed. I laughed, gathering him up and offering the bride a reassuring smile. Some fresh air will help. I needed to confront him now. Needed him to know why. Needed to see the look in his eyes. For her. Rounding a garden wall, I hurled him down. The moonlight made everything look pale. I could see, even as the toxin ran its course, a glint of fear in his eyes. You raped her, tortured her, you sick fuck. How could you? What Ash? I know what you did. She told me on her deathbed. With her last words, she begged me to make you pay. John nodded, ruefully. Then all of a sudden, he laughed so hard that it looked like the effort might actually kill him. She was so smart, he chuckled. She made me swear not to tell you, not after the diagnosis. Tell me what? She would have been court-martialed, tried, he croaked. But the cancer. You never wondered why the cuffs? Hey. Stay with me. I cried, slapping him hard. I was her last mark, he began, his eyes widening as the effects of the poison gripped like a vice. She was a double agent. Stories number 25. How to tell wife she isn't part of my inheritance. Years ago I was gifted a shit ton worth of stock when my parents both began showing signs of dementia. Cut to this year and both my parents have passed, and I have inherited another large chunk of money in various account types. Long story short, my wife thinks half is hers, and she has ideas on how to spend just about all of it. It has never been commingled with joint funds. So, would I be the asshole if I informed her flat out that my inheritance is mine, not ours, and although I am willing to indulge her wants, I will be the final authority on how those funds are spent? How would I break it to her in the right way? We do have a great marriage and up to this point have never had a serious disagreement revolving around money. Stories number 26. Would I be the asshole if I use my husband's credit card to send him home early from our vacation? Update. The crew informed me he's been taken off the ship to the local jail for biting one of the security guards. I gave them his passport and some shoes and will be leaving him there to figure it out. We are currently halfway through a 7-day cruise with my parents, sister, and our 3 children. At some point in the night my husband went for a walk and ended up extremely intoxicated. I was woken up by a call from guest services letting me know he's been a disturbance to many downstairs and they were sending him back up to the room. Once he got back it didn't take long for all hell to break loose. At this point it was roughly 1:30 a.m., he was yelling and screaming in the cabin and in our baby's face and someone called security, rightfully so. They tried calling him down but he became absolutely irate and started making vile threats towards them. In the end it took, I'm guessing about 6 security and the head of security to tackle him in the hallways and take him to the ship's jail. I had our daughter in my arms and had to hide in a little cove in the hallway so that she didn't physically see what was happening and that he also didn't try to come at us. I want him completely gone from the ship. He's ruined not only my family's vacation but now forced others to deal with his bullshit also, and at this point even thought I know they are empty threats, I would argue that he could be a threat to the staff and passengers. Here's where I feel like I may be the AH. I was going to use my credit card to pay for whatever flight back home tomorrow for him. However, the more I think about it, the less I want to be in debt for this man. I have racked up thousands of dollars because he up and quit his job and blew our entire savings account on the stock market without me knowing because he never gave me access to the account. He has a credit card too and it's in his wallet in the cabin with a considerably less amount of debt on it than mine. I work. He doesn't, and I really want to use it to pay for his flight home but a part of me feels like that is still stealing. Should I use it without his knowledge? I'm trying to avoid as much contact with him as possible. TLDR, husband gets too drunk on cruise and is forcibly removed from the cabin after screaming and threatening the crew. I want to use his credit card without his permission to send him home early. Stories number 27. Am I the asshole here for telling my husband we need to suck it up and buy our daughter a new car? Am I the asshole here for telling my daughter I won't budge even if she never speaks to me again? My daughter Casey, 17F, worked and saved up money for around a year to be able to afford a better car than we could buy her with our family budget. My other daughter Alana, 16F, has ADHD, recently got her driver's license, and asked to drive Casey's car. Casey allowed it, but Alana ended up having a bad accident around 6 months ago which basically rendered the car unusable. The insurance payout wasn't nearly enough to cover the replacement, and with Alana's medical bills from the accident, thankfully there was no permanent damage, just a broken arm and leg. There was no way we could afford to replace Casey's car immediately. Alana was very apologetic to Casey, and so were we since we couldn't afford to replace her car. Casey didn't accept our apology, and has been basically avoiding us, skipping family dinners, and pretty much pretending that her mom, Alana, and I don't exist and only talks to us if she needs a form signed for her school. I begged her to come to a family therapy session, and she eventually relented but with the condition that Alana wouldn't be present. In the therapy session, she told us that she won't be resuming a relationship with us until we replace her car, which realistically won't be until next year. When the therapist asked how she expected us to do that, Casey said we could just make Alana work to earn the money. The issue is that Alana has severe ADHD, and already has trouble managing her schoolwork. I'm worried that making her work to earn the money will harm her grades and have significant ramifications for her future. Casey said, well, she should have thought about that before destroying my car. I don't care, I'm not gonna speak to any of you unless I have my car replaced. I responded that she was free to avoid speaking to me for as long as she wanted to, but I'm not going to permanently harm her sister's future to get her a car earlier. My wife agrees with me that we need to stand firm on our position, but is also genuinely afraid of Casey never speaking to her ever again. I understand that her car was ruined, but as a parent I need to look out for all my children, not just one. I also don't want to set the precedent that emotional blackmail will work even if what you're asking for is unreasonable. I, 39F, and my husband, 43M, have 2 daughters, 16 who we'll call Alana and 17 who I'll call Casey. Casey has held down a steady job for over a year now and was able to get herself a car. Now, she got this car right as Alana passed her own driver's test, so there was a little issue between who was going to be driving. After a little persuasion, Casey did allow Alana to use her car, so long as somebody else paid for gas. We told her that wasn't going to cut it. Alana doesn't have the money for that, and it's her car, her responsibility to keep gas in it and keep it on the road. Here's where it gets difficult. Alana wrecked about a month ago. Luckily, she was fine aside from a broken wrist and a mild concussion, but Casey was fuming the entire time, and seemed to have this expectation that we would be replacing her car. Her and my husband got into it, and she threw her arms up like a child and just stopped speaking to us. We coaxed her into going to family therapy with us, though it wasn't productive, as she and the therapist agreed that it'd be best to maintain the reduced contact until she's paid back. Here's the problem, that car was $15 grand. She saved up every penny for a year for that car. She'd ask us about twice a week if we changed our mind, and obviously the answer was no, but that was the only thing she'd say to us. It didn't seem to bother my husband, and he kept saying she'll get over it, until last week, she packed some things and had my mother come and get her. She's been staying at her grandmother's for a little over a week now, and she gave me a good earful. Whatever Casey told he worked, because earlier today, my husband and I were informed we had 30 days to replace the car in full or she was taking us to court. I think my husband is admirable in wanting to stand his ground, but the way I'm looking at it, we have 2 options. And I am sick of my daughter not talking to me because of shit that is not my fault. Alana has been a wreck, she's already battling severe ADHD, and now she's shaking at the thought of having to appear in court. So I sat them both down, and said we have 2 options. We can suck it up, pay $15,000 and have our daughter and sister back, and Alana will just have to buck up and work. Or, we can let my dad sue my husband and I on Casey's behalf, and almost certainly lose. We spoke to 4 different firms, and all 4 echoed similar sentiment, that it would probably cost us close to triple in the end to bring it to court and fight it there. So that's when I told my husband that I am not going $30 grand further into debt for him to hold the pettiest grudge. He's saying that I'm being manipulative by holding this whole situation over his and Alana's heads. I'm not saying it's not part my fault. All I said was that no matter what, at the end of the day, we owe Casey and he needs to just accept that. We can afford $15,000 to replace the car, but if we have to dish out double that, just to lose in court anyway, I'm divorcing him before he makes that mistake. In either case, I'm done not supporting both of my daughters. We've tried reasoning with Casey and it has resulted in nothing. We lost this one. Am I the asshole for trying to get my husband to accept it? I feel I may be, just for how long I was being a passenger, no pun intended, in the situation, and for threatening my husband with divorce. I don't think we did anything that wrong, but I'm willing to admit when we made some mistakes and we have to make up for it somehow. It's been a few weeks since I last updated, and I want to start out by addressing a few things that opened my eyes a little bit in regards to this situation. The first thing being, my husband's post, which came well before my own. He and I fought over that. I truthfully didn't love that he used real names, however when I found out he posted, for the sake of transparency, I used real names as well. But, with that being said, I went through with the difficult decision to serve him divorce papers. To really abbreviate things, I went to therapy as lots of you suggested, and I was assessed with a diagnosis for an obsessive-compulsive disorder in my 2nd session, and in my 3rd session, we discussed the whole car situation, and my personal therapist explained it to me in a way that made it hard to not feel awful for Case. The discussion we had covered quite a lot, but the common denominator in everything that's been going wrong has, in large part, been my husband. He's the reason Casey shared her car, he's the reason Alana got hurt driving on her own, and he's the reason we're set for court in barely a week and still don't have an attorney. And me. I don't know what I've been doing, but it hasn't been being a mother, if I'm honest. One of you asked me straight up why I was being a passenger, and I just don't have a good answer. I let my parents know about the divorce and they were a little concerned, but what I didn't expect was for Casey to reach out. The last time we talked was mostly her and my husband butting heads. I really thought she was about to turn me on a spit, but I've never heard her cry like that, at least not since she was much younger. I make a little bit more than my husband, but finding an apartment was brutal, especially with Alana wanting to come with me. I don't think I was clear enough about how badly I want to pay Casey back before, but I do. Most of my money is in joint savings though, so there isn't much I can afford, but my husband wasn't going to back down. I won't lie, I was selfish. I begged Casey to drop my name from this suit. I told her I would pay what I could afford to write this second, which wasn't much in comparison, and she told me that it wasn't so much the car or the value on its own she wanted back. It was the security to have something of her own, and she listed off probably dozens of instances where Alana got first pick over her and it was very hard to refute. She told me that losing that much money sucked, which I fully understand, but the bigger loss to her was that her first big girl purchase, which a lot of friends and family were excited about, was now going to be remembered as a family-ending disaster. She told me that she knows I can't replace that. We agreed to breakfast next week and joint therapy, us two, and her only condition was that I don't try at any point to save him from the suit, which I agreed to. Alana came to me even before my last post, saying she only drove so far because my now ex-husband pressured her into picking up the grocery order early for something he wanted to make. This also changed my perspective. I was under the impression that she was doing her own thing, but even my husband owned up to that, which ground my gears, but I put it together. Illegal driver in an expensive car, not insured, and under pressure. Alana drove, but I've come to realize that my ex-husband seems to have a tendency to like to pressure people. He's pressured me a lot too. He probably pressured Casey into letting Alana drive at all. Which brings me back to her, and we finished our talk with better terms. I owe her so much more than breakfast out, but I'm just beyond grateful she's even willing to look at me. I've seen a lot of bold assumptions that I hate Casey and that I vastly favor Alana, but I only feel the second part was ever accurate. I've never hated my own daughter. I was frustrated with her over something I've come to realize wasn't her fault. As of now, I'm just adjusting to a much quieter place, and to my phone buzzing non-stop. I've only been moved out for 5 days and Alana has seemed so much less anxious, to me at least. It's odd because my place now isn't anywhere near what the house is, but I think last night was probably the first time I've slept 8 hours since high school. Today was productive, and for Casey. I'll admit it. I hope she wins. I hope she gets her car and then some. As for the divorce, I don't want much material. I won't say no to it. I'd rather just have my share of joint savings, and try to tackle my own issues, of which I guess I have more than I would have been willing to admit a month ago. I know I'm going to get pelted most likely, but I want you to know I'm thankful. The internet is mean, but it tells the truth, and however this turns out, it's largely your comments that helped me see what I was doing wrong, and who was enabling those things. And most importantly, how I could stop it. It's times like this where my dad would tell me I'm not lucky, I'm privileged, and I think that applies here. I'm privileged that my daughter didn't just laugh, even though she could and arguably should have. That's the update. I'll update whenever Case and I meet, barring she's comfortable with it. And then you probably won't hear from me until the whole suit and divorce is over and done with. I just wanted Reddit to know, I hear you all, and I wish I could have seen reason when I first posted. I'm frustrated reading my own comments. Therapy is a powerful thing. Stories number 28. They doubled my subscription price, I removed it. I have changed prices into USD. 3 years ago I bought a 2-year subscription to a weekly newspaper I like. For about $400, I would get 100 printed issues and online access, which I thought was fair. After my subscription ran out, they sent me a bill for 2 more years. The price was now $800. Fuck no. That's the same price per issue as in a kiosk. So I cancelled. The next week, I saw an ad for the paper. Intro offer. 10 issues for $1. They have a system in place, of course, I thought. It will be unavailable for me, but it wasn't. I was able to buy the intro subscription. After 10 weeks, I got the intro offer again. Now, a year has gone and I just got my 5th intro offer. They wanted $800, I've paid $5. Stories number 29. Would I be the asshole for going and yelling at my in-laws to stay out of our business after what they pulled? Dusty Crew, this is something that just recently happened and I have been so frustrated about it on and off for a while and I want to go and yell at my in-laws because of this, so here is some backstory. So back in September, my in-laws wanted us over at their house to talk about stuff. Well, we went over, they were working on their new chicken coop, so they said we can do whatever we wanted. I went and volunteered myself to help them because I thought it was the right thing to do. We worked on it for a few hours and then called it a day because we were running out of supplies. We all went into the house and cleaned up and then sat down to watch the new Deadpool movie that they just rented. Afterwards, we had dinner and was relaxing and having a good time. Mil took my wife into the other room to show her something, and then apparently after they were done with that, Mil started asking questions left and right about the topic that we were supposed to talk about as a group. I did not learn about this till we were leaving their house, and it frustrated me so much. Mil even started talk crap about my parents and accusing them of doing stuff that she used to do herself to my wife. Since then, we have been low contact with them, but I so much want to say so much too, but I am conflicted. So, would I be the asshole for going and yelling at my in-laws to stay out of our business after the stunt they pulled on us? Edit to the question, would I be the asshole for going and yelling at my in-laws to stay out of our business after my Mil went behind my back and cornered my wife, to have a conversation that was supposed to include all of us? Edit, okay, so it is my own fault for trying to hide what the conversation is about. It is about how my wife and I are not fully financially stable but choosing to move out of my parents' house to go live with my brother because my parents took in their grandkids, my one niece and 3 nephews, and we needed a new stable environment for our mental well-being. Mil thinks that ever since my wife moved out she has been unhappy and all of a sudden has depression because she used to be so happy living with them. When the truth is that because of Mil, my wife has this depression for the mental abuse that she went through growing up, a story that I don't want to go down. And then accused my dad of stealing money from us even though he doesn't steal money at all. My siblings and I only added my dad to our bank accounts to always make it easier to pay each other back. I know that Mil is deflecting in that case because she used to steal from my wife all the time. I have even seen it for myself. Mil even tried to convince my wife to move in with them even though my wife does not want to at all, and it would make it harder on me because it would add another hour to my drive into work, and I am already having to wake up at 3:30 a.m. just to get up and ready and be to work by 4:30 a.m. All we are trying to do is trying to make the best life choices for ourselves that we think is right, but her parents don't approve of it. That is what the whole conversation is supposed to be about, that was supposed to be between the 4 of us, my in-laws, my wife and I. Stories number 30, want to make me look bad? Don't dish out what you can't take. This happened a while ago, but I was recently reminded of this and I thought it fit this subreddit well. I used to work at a well-known retail chain popular for its cheap prices. At the time, this particular store had a massively high turnover rate, especially for the supervisor/keyholder position, which I so happened to hold. I was the most senior supervisor on staff by many months when Ken was hired, and I know this doesn't sound like much, but for this store I may as well have been there for years. Like all other new hires, I treated Ken with nothing but kindness when he joined our team. He returned that favor by mansplaining my job to me, blaming me for every single fault he found within the store and using the grading system we used to rate the previous night's clothes to bully me. By that I mean, he would write absolutely no good things about my clothes, offer not a single bit of constructive criticism, and would only do this to me and no other supervisor on staff. So as you can see, Ken and I clashed with each other. The crux of my petty revenge came when he consistently took over my clothes. For those of you who have never had the joyous experience of working in a retail setting, if you are the cashier, you are on a leash. You are not allowed to be out of eyesight of cash at any point, so for example, if you need to use the washroom, you have to ask permission and get someone to cover you. One of the very few perks of being a supervisor at this job was that you had free reign of the store floor and weren't tethered to a particular spot for hours. On several occasions when I was scheduled to close, my closing cashier called out of their shift, and Ken volunteered to fill it. Unfortunately, for me that meant I got demoted to the role of cashier and was tethered to cash largely against my will. Around the 4th or so time of this happening I stood my ground and said I'd like to complete my close, and instead of being courteous he ran to call the manager and was given my close instead. After that situation happened and on top of his condescending behavior, I decided I would get back at Ken. When he took over my closes and when he wasn't looking, I would go through the store and mess things up that he had faced, put things where they didn't belong, and generally makes the store worse. This was especially fun when I was the opening manager the following morning, and I got to write up his closes as being bad. And for those who were wondering, the reason I did not quit over this, and believe me, I contemplated many times over my duration of working with him. I stuck it out because I was too stubborn to let him have his way and let a man push me out of my job. He ultimately quit for unrelated reasons, and I was pretty sure my birthday came early the day that he did. Stories number 31. I had the best weekend of my life. Not even this last weekend, but the one before it. And I want to record it here so I don't forget. Saturday, woke up with my partner around 8 a.m. Went to the cafe beside my house and sat and talked with him until 11 a.m. We just blabbered on and on for 3 hours and people watched. The weather outside was sunny and chilly and the fall leaves and pumpkins were perfect. Almost cartoonishly perfect. Then we went back to mine, where I made us brunch. Then we napped until 2 p.m. Then we got in the car, the weather still beautiful and blustery and bright, and went to pick up sandwiches on our way out of town. We ended up driving to a national park, where we went on a 10 kilometers hike through the woods. It was so yellow and golden, and we watched the light change from sunny to sunset to light blue. On our dark drive back into the city, a storm hit. We watched the dark clouds roll in across the cornfields. Getting back into town, we decided to stop at a warm, crowded, steamy Thai restaurant for dinner. We had to wait 40 minutes for a table and we played word games the whole time and were killing ourselves laughing. Then we had dinner sitting at the window. We drove home and watched a scary movie in my bed on the projector. Sunday, we woke up again around 8 a.m., but this time it was super rainy and cloudy. Another, yet different, prototypical fall day. Because my bedroom was still set up with the projector, my partner decided to put on a movie, which we literally never do in the mornings. It was like a special treat, haha, and he put on The Godfather, which I'd never seen. We watched the first 90 minutes and I was amazed. I was obsessed. Then he turned it off and was like, and we can finish it tonight. But because I was so obsessed we decided to have a Godfather-themed day. So we went to the cafe beside my house again, got coffees to go, and walked a 45-minute walk through my beautiful neighborhood to our favorite brunch place. We had Eggs Benedict. We stayed there for 2 full hours. Then, we walked through the farmer's market to get stuff for dinner. Then we popped into my favorite vintage store and he bought me a cozy scarf just as a random present/surprise. Then we meandered through Little Italy and went into this old-school bakery from 1955 and got pistachio cannolis and ate them outside with our freezing cold hands. Then we went home for our couples therapy session on Zoom with our therapist and really successfully worked out a kink we had in our communication over a disagreement from a couple weeks ago. As it was starting to get dark, we realized that we forgot to get gluten-free pasta, I am newly diagnosed celiac, at the market. He flicked on some lights in my living room and lit some candles and said, you go get the pasta from the store. I'll tidy up around here and do the dishes and chop the garlic. So I went to the grocery store, I love supermarkets at night for some reason, and talked on the phone to my friend to catch up while I browsed the aisles, knowing my best friend ever was waiting for me at home. I think that was my favorite part of the weekend, being at the grocery store and knowing I had a full night ahead with him still. When I got home, he was playing jazz in the kitchen and singing along to it. He'd cleaned my apartment and done all my dishes and was preparing things for dinner. We danced a little bit in the kitchen and he poured me a glass of wine. He kissed me on the head. We made tomato sauce together. And I forget what we were laughing so hard at, but we were in stitches basically the whole time. We FaceTimed his mom and my friend. We ate our pasta and then went into my room to watch the last 90 minutes of The Godfather. He paused it every 3 minutes so I could ask questions. He always does that because I need to talk through every scene of every movie. He says it is one of his favorite parts of watching movies with me. That makes me feel so adored. Monday, we are in a long-distance relationship, so he was going to drive back to his city on Monday morning. I decided to go with him to be his date to the premiere of his TV show. However, on our way back to his city, he asked if I wanted to stop somewhere along the drive for another hike. We did. It was supposed to be an hour-long detour, but it ended up being a 5-hour-long detour because our hike was so beautiful. Even better than the hike from Saturday, can you even believe it? Then, our car broke down as we were driving in the night back to his city. He said we can make a fun adventure out of it. So we got a hotel in a small town and spent the night. Something stressful turned wonderful. Tuesday morning we got back to the city after sitting in the pouring rain in rush hour traffic for 3 hours. A busy freeway with billions of cars rushing through rush hour in the rain. But inside our car we were talking and drinking our coffees and at peace. And happy. Just happy. That's all. And then that evening went out for sushi and to his premiere. It was hands down the best weekend of my life, even though it doesn't seem like much. A lot of walking and talking was basically what it was. But doing it alongside him is thrilling and hilarious and just feels like my heart finally has a home. We are not a new couple. But it feels like we are. Stories number 32. Am I the asshole? For refusing to give business to one of my close friends. Hello. I've been listening to you guys for forever and I love what you do, thanks for being awesome. Now for context, my friend is a waxing specialist, she's great at what she does, and I've been going to her since she was working under a company. I met her through an appointment I got with her, we've been friends the day we met. In her time there I'd been seeing her like 2 years consistently and then she moved on her own suite/rental so she was running the show on her own. I was happy for her, I followed her there, and I always tip well too. She's been doing her own thing since the beginning of this year, now fast forward to last month. I was on the highway heading over and there was a bad wreck so I let her know I would be 10 minutes late. She said that's fine. I got there, we did the appointment as usual and everything seemed fine and normal. However at the end for payment time she said, oh by the way I'm gonna have to charge you an extra 30% for being late. Now I do hair myself, so I get needing to have some income if you get a no-show or someone shows up late and ruins the rest of your workday. Totally understandable. However, my problem is there was no policy of this or the amount that would be charged written anywhere or on her website for booking. What also got me was how she said, yeah, a lot of people kept no-showing my appointments last month, so I'm having to charge 30% of their service so I don't lose all that money. I totally get that. I am understanding, but I'm not a no-show, and I've been a consistent client, so shouldn't I have been charged less for just being late? Like 15-20%. I just wish that I would have either gotten a warning for next time I was late or it was clearly written somewhere or on the booking website she uses. It almost feels like she charged me more because she knew I wouldn't fight it, and that I've had that happen to myself before. For me, professionally, you should have an amount for a late fee and a no-show fee written for your booking, and it didn't show more than a no-show fee. I cancelled my next appointment with her and have just gone back to the company that I used to go to so I can find a new wax person. I feel kind of bad, but honestly I've given her free haircuts, never no-showed, and I'm rarely late. I'm worried about the rift in the friendship it might cause, but honestly I wouldn't have done that to her if it was me. I would have treated it like a speeding ticket. Hey, you were late this time and that's fine, but going forward I need to charge X amount for a late fee. That would have been great, or just charge me 15 to 20%, but 30 seems ridiculous for me not being a no-show. Stories number 33. Am I the asshole for leaving my boyfriend over a gift? I, 19F, met Andy, 21M, in January 2024. I had just moved out of my parents' house and had a horrible roommate. He lived in the dorms with a few friends of his at the time we met. We started officially dating March 2024. His school year ended around April/May. He is from a different town a few hours away and goes back there for the summer. Before he left he brought up moving in together for convenience, as he would save money and I could get away from my roommate. My lease was month to month. In my opinion, couples shouldn't move in together out of convenience. My gut told me this. And I would bring it up, but he assured me that he wanted to live together too. It was just an added bonus, it would help both our situations. I was hesitant because I had just moved out, and I did it by myself. So I wasn't sure I was ready to give up my independence yet. We ended up having conversations about it and he got me on board. June 2024 we signed our lease. Andy had been living in his hometown by then and wanted to spend his last summer of college with his friends from high school. I was understanding of this, so June-September I lived at the apartment on my own. Okay, that was long, now let me get to the point. I am a people pleaser though and through, it has led to many issues in my past relationships. I sacrifice my happiness for my partners and I don't necessarily see it every time, in time. Because I know I have this mindset, I've worked pretty hard to make myself feel worth it. I've never had the effort I put into the relationship reciprocated, so I treat myself and raise my own standards. I had a health issue and he had to take me to the ER, this was before we moved in together. Andy was 20 at this point and caring enough to take me to the ER was shocking for me, it made me fall very hard. He would bring me Gatorade and soup that week, just made sure I was taken care of. This was like the first time anyone I was in a relationship with had really reciprocated the care I have for them. So obviously this made it easier to move in with him so early. I had lots and lots of trust in him. My birthday was around when we signed the lease. He had came down from his hometown that day to celebrate with me. I had told him I wanted to go to the zoo this year. And explained when I was growing up my parents took me to the zoo every year and I got to pick out a new stuffed animal every time. The zoo has the best stuffed animals, I don't care. That's what made the day so special. I got to take my animal around the zoo with me and I got to find the real animal of the stuffy I picked out. Then I would introduce them. We stopped going when I was 10 and I hadn't been since. When we got to the zoo he didn't want to go to the gift shop, which is okay, it's usually the last stop for most people. We walked around and had a good time, but then I had to beg him to go in with me. When we got inside and my little child was beaming, he was making comments about how it was dumb I wanted a stuffed animal, it was a waste of money, he didn't see the point. So I put the sloth down and we went home. Edit, I was going to buy the stuffed animal myself but he was literally shaming me and everyone saw. He didn't get me a birthday present, except for the flowers I insisted on at the farmer's market. He did not get me a birthday card, and to put icing on the cake, he didn't compliment me one single time my entire birthday. He does not care. I don't need the validation, I know myself, I know who I am, I love myself. But again, in all my past relationships this is something I have had to beg for. This is also something we talked about before my birthday, as it was an issue then. It felt like he doesn't even want to be there. When we walked around the farmer's market he's always concerned about how I am inconveniencing the people around me. He will go so far as to grab my arm and pull me away from what I am looking at because I was in someone's way. At the time I was also unhappy at my job. I was working 40 hours a week in an extremely toxic environment. All he would tell me is that there's no reason to still be there, rent. I was not complaining more than the average person, he just wasn't happy I wasn't listening to him, so he stopped listening to me. This made it very hard for me to go to him about anything, because if you don't care about my struggles, then why would you care about anything else? I was applying to searching for jobs, but you know how the job market is right now. It's extremely difficult, and I was not going to leave the stable job I was at for 2 years for something that didn't pay more or didn't offer more. I had rent to pay, he didn't even have a job, so it was hard to hear him criticize me. Edit, I would work with my dad, but he owns a construction company. I did get a new job and it's a lot better. When he moved back into our apartment, my dad let him work with him to pay rent. My dad has his own company. He would flex all this money on me, but would never pay for things, barely even on dates. Only when it was uncomfortable for him to ask to split or say we weren't paying together. I am not saying I want a man to pay for everything, but it is nice to be taken care of by your boyfriend a bit, especially when he's coming home and flexing all this cash he got from your father on you. My dad never really needed Andy's help, but he wanted to make sure I was taken care of, and that's how he did that. Fast forward to October 2024, all of the previous occurred before. I wanted to do boo baskets because I was feeling disconnected and I wasn't feeling seen by him. We weren't really talking, he wasn't being off vibes, he was happy when I got home. He wasn't initiating conversations, and this is when I started school, so I was now working full-time and a full-time student. I was and am exhausted. I know that's not a unique experience. But it was not his experience. He worked maybe 2 days a week with my dad and would make $500 to $600 a week. So boo baskets were my way for us to reconnect. He is not a good gift giver obviously, so I made a list for him. It looked like, price range $30, can include sight, smell, touch, sentiments, personal gift, couple activity. And I listed 1 to 3 examples under each category. I went to show him this list. I was very happy and excited for this. And he told me he didn't need me to woman-plane it to him, he can handle a basket. So the day comes around and I had a whole day planned. I had been talking about it for weeks. He made fun of me for treating it like a holiday. Boo basket date, he looks at me and says, can we push it to this weekend? I didn't get my stuff yet. I had been talking about this for close to a month. So I actually put my foot down and said no, not when I've been talking about this so much. I got home, it was boo basket date time. What he got me was a pumpkin and shots. I don't do shots. He said the pumpkin was for the cat so he feels included. Tell me you don't care without telling me you don't care. I got him a few personal and helpful small things he's been talking about. And a card. A few days later we had a talk about it. He essentially broke down crying, saying he procrastinated it and his dad wasn't around when he was a kid, so he didn't have a good role model and he doesn't know how to act in relationships. He was sobbing next to me as I talked to him about how everything he's been doing has been hurting me, not acknowledging my presence, not saying anything that would make me feel like you are even attracted to me at all, not listening to me, and not caring about our dates. I told him ever since we moved in together he's stopped trying. I don't come with the apartment. He has to work for both. And for him to be acting like this not even a year into our relationship is absolutely insane. So what changed? He just talked about how now that our lives are intertwined he feels like he can't be himself anymore. I don't know how that works at all, but okay. After we had this conversation, Andy did not speak to me for 2 days. He slept in the spare room, he didn't leave the spare room, he ate in there. I wouldn't be surprised if he peed in there too. Once he was finally ready to speak again, I had even more to say. He ignored me for days, after I told him he hurt my feelings by not caring about me or our dates. When you live together you need dates or you're just roommates. It was such a small issue of him just hurting my feelings and needing to say I'm sorry and putting in more effort. But instead, he ignored me for days, when just made me sit and think. If he is acting this way not even a year in, for such a small issue, how is he going to react when we face bigger life bumps in the road? When we had our next conversation I brought up all of these things and all he did was sit there and say he was right. But now we are at the point I need space to think about how you've been treating me. I began to tell him about how I can't get over this, and that sounds dramatic, but it's about how he views me. He's told me before he wants to be a guy in his 20s, in response to me saying I need him to communicate plans with me. He just started going on about how I'm blowing this up, I'm acting like he cheated on me. How there's things I did to him too. I stopped him and asked, did I ever ignore you for days? If I did and I don't know, I'm very sorry. But no, he used me not having sex with him against me. I have been assaulted and roofed multiple times and have always had issues around sex. He is aware of this. I need to feel comfortable with someone to be intimate with them, so once again I said how can I fuck someone who doesn't act like they even like me, and went on to explain that I can't trust how he will react to bigger life issues. He then got made and defensive talking about what bigger issues could we possibly face. That shocked me. That made it clear he does now understand the seriousness of living with a significant other and he clearly is not emotionally ready for it. So I told him that he should go be a guy in his 20s and maybe go to therapy, that you can't be in a relationship if you don't love yourself and don't know who you are. He then questioned if I loved myself or knew who I was. The audacity. Yes, it's taken me so long to live myself. And he started to take that away from me. Edit, we are broken up. I can't really move out or kick him out. I am on the lease and him and his mom are too. I wouldn't have moved in with a boyfriend at 19 if it wasn't the best and safest option for me at the time. My dad has fired him and is rightfully pissed off. Stories number 34. Am I the jerk for punching my brother for him ruining my life? So to start, I was 13 years old and my brother was 11, we never got along but I've always been chill, he however always had it been a competition for everything, even just eating. I always shrugged it off but secretly always was pissed off. So at this time I had also been doing YouTube and my brother would constantly make fun of me with mean and hurtful comments of what I did on it, which I just kept letting him do it because my brother had one power which always let him get away with everything, my parents. My parents always favored him but tried to hide it. I at some point got used to it at the age of 8 because I knew my brother was probably just easier to live in their eyes. But one day, which is where we finally get to the part where I have no idea what to do, he at one point started going into my channel and making my viewers hate me. He would post hate speech and such rude comments. I had tried to delete them as soon as I would see them, which would cause me to do bad in school because I was trying to get people not to hate me. And the worst part happened in December 25th, I was completely vulnerable because I would never go on YT on Christmas. But my brother had gone onto my channel and deleted it. I had found out about this on Christmas night. I confronted him in the living room about everything and this is what he said to make me punch him. Well, you deserve it anyway, you bitch. You're just a f-king loser anyway. So I went up to him and punched him right in the nose hard to the wall, to the point where my parents pulled me away while my brother looked at me and cried, and I just couldn't take it so I ran to my room and cried. So I stayed in my room for the whole Christmas break. So am I the jerk? Stories number 35. So, 28M, wants me, 29F, to admit to my daughter, 9 years, that he's number 1 and she's second. How do I approach this? So a bit ago, like most kids do, my daughter started asking random as fuck questions. Well, she asked me who my favorite in the house is. My initial response was a joke. I said my favorite is my husband's sister's cat. But then her odd silence cued me to give an actual response. Keep in mind, my husband is in the room as well. And so I say that she's my number 1, and my so is number 2, then I list our pets. And I can't recall how he chimed in, but he said that I have it all wrong. Following with, because I'm not going to be spending the rest of my life with her, at some point she's going to get older and fly out of the nest. At that point I asked her to please leave the room so he and I can talk. When she did, he just repeated, then just tell her the truth. As I tried to stay calm, I tried explaining to him I agree and see where he's coming from, but I don't agree with breaking my daughter's heart and giving her a low sense of self-worth and have the consequences of that possibly be detrimental to her development. Now, as I am typing this, we put a halt to resolving it, because we could tell we were both started to get a little heated. I guess what advice in seeking is, am I not thinking accurately? And if I am, how do I approach this conversation with him again? Edit, my so is my husband. Stories number 36. Am I the asshole? My sister promised to help me pay my credit card and she refused. To put you into context, my sister and her husband went to a European tour a couple of months ago. My sister told me to buy everything that my parents needed with my credit card and she would help me pay it later. Thing is, she broke a leg while in Paris and had to get surgery done there. Fast forward to last month, she tells me she had asked for an advanced pay in her job and said that she would be short in money for the next month and asked me to continue buying the medicine, diapers and such that my impaired father needs, saying that she would help me pay my card. Some days ago, my headset broke and my shoes too. I use the headset for work, so I needed new ones and also needed new shoes, so I buy the two things in installments. Yesterday, she tells me to send her my credit card statement so she would help me pay it. I sent her the amount I spent in medicine and other things for my dad, but she insisted that I send her the full credit card statement. She then flips out because of the 2 installment purchases I made for myself and the other 90% of the expenses are food and things for my father. She tells me off saying that I shouldn't have spent that money on those 2 things, which I needed, and refused to help me pay what I spent on my father, things that we had agreed on paying 50/50ths. So, today, I sent her the amount of money that I spent on medicine and other things for my father, saying that these are the things that she should care about, not my 2 purchases for myself, which I'm totally responsible for, and that she doesn't have to help me pay that, just my dad's stuff. She adamantly denied to help me and blocked me on WhatsApp. So I sent her a message saying that I will not be a part of the expenses for my dad with my money, that I wouldn't expend one more cent. If my dad needs something, she would have to cover them herself entirely. So, I ask you folks, am I the asshole? Stories number 37. Am I the asshole here for kicking my brother out of my home after he invited our estranged father over without asking me? I, 28F, have been estranged from my father, 55M, for the last 10 years. He was abusive growing up, and after years of therapy and healing, I made the decision to cut him out of my life completely. My brother, 24M, however, has always maintained a relationship with him, and while I don't agree with it, I've tried to respect their bond. I've made it clear, though, that I do not want him in my life, and I don't want to hear about him. A few weeks ago, my brother visited me at my house. We were hanging out when he suddenly mentioned that he was planning to bring our dad over to patch things up with me. I was shocked and told him that under no circumstances should our father be coming to my home. I even made it clear that I wasn't interested in talking to him, ever. Fast forward to yesterday, my brother shows up with our dad. I was furious. I immediately told them both to leave and that my brother had completely disrespected my boundaries. My brother tried to apologize, saying he just wanted to fix things and thought this was the best way to do it. I told him he had no right to make that decision for me and that I never wanted to see our father again. My brother left, but he's now texting me, saying I overreacted and that he was just trying to help me heal. He says it's not fair to cut off the chance for reconciliation. I'm feeling really torn, because while I know I'm within my rights to not want him in my life, I also don't want to ruin my relationship with my brother. But at the same time, my boundaries are important to me. So, am I the asshole for kicking my brother out of my house and refusing to talk to our father? Stories number 38. Am I the asshole for yelling at my mom after my brother ran away? My family is pretty religious and conservative. I have my own opinions but I always keep my mouth shut. I just avoid my family for the most part. My brother, 20, still lives at home and well, ever since he was a kid he's always been more out there. He's very open-minded and artistic as well, so he's always pissing off our parents and sisters. He was a really good volleyball player in high school but quit his senior year just to spite our parents, so I'm sure you can tell what kind of guy he is. But he's the only boy, so our parents keep letting it go. Anyways, he recently acted in some silly amateur film for one of his friends. In it, he kisses a boy. I genuinely don't care. Anyways, the film wasn't a secret and posted publicly, so someone we know came across it and it was sent to our parents, who kicked him out. My younger sister and her husband offered to take him in, but my brother left not even a week later because our BIL was being a dick to him about the film. Now no one knows where he is and everyone's pissed and angry. I only know he's alive because he's texted me a few times. Mom calls the whole family over almost every day to play the blame game, and yesterday it was my turn and she was basically saying that as the oldest I didn't do my job and led him astray because I failed as a sister or some crap. I got so angry I told her to shut the hell up and that this is her fault more than it is mine. Doesn't sound like a huge deal, but it's super disrespectful in our family, so everyone was upset with me for yelling at mom and breaking her heart even more after what my brother did. I told them to stop acting like victims and that they'd better pray he decides to see any of us again, and left. I feel better, but the entire family is angry at me. Especially now that my brother isn't around to take their anger. I wish I could run away too, but unfortunately, I have responsibilities tying me here, so I'm wondering if I'm the asshole and if I should apologize. Am I the asshole? Stories number 39. Husband, 30M, and I, 28F, opened our relationship and now everything is terrible. My husband and I have been married for 6 years, together for 8. My husband, I'll call him Eric, has always been a really intense person, but he's a good man. When we got together I noticed he had a much higher sex drive than I did, but I would usually have sex with him when I wasn't in mood anyway because I love him. He's never vocalized any problems until somewhat recently. I should also mention, just before we got married we talked about having kids. I'm indifferent to kids whereas he doesn't want them, so agreed not to have them. Over the last year my sex drive has been almost non-existent. I've been checked by doctors and they say nothing is wrong physically, but I should talk to a therapist, which I haven't done yet. I haven't even been able to just have sex with him to have sex like I was doing. About 4 months ago he sat me down and we talked about all this and he said he needs sex, which I told him I understood, but I can't give that to him right now. We argued for a bit and he ended up sleeping on the couch. In the morning he suggested we open the relationship. I was heartbroken. He explained that we either give this a try or end the relationship. So I agreed. We set boundaries: no bringing the person to our house ever, no talking about it, always use protection and regularly get tested. He agreed to all of this. I was actually surprised how okay I was with this as the months moved along. Even when he'd text me that he's going to be late, or when he'd kiss me and tell me his plans that night. It almost felt like a burden was lifted from me. Well, yesterday my husband sat me down again and said he's something really difficult to tell me. For the last couple of months he's been seeing this one girl and she's pregnant. I think I dissociated a little because I heard him talking but couldn't understand the words he was saying. When I came back to reality I asked if it was his and is she keeping it. Yes and yes. And he plans on being in this child's life actively. I asked him who she was and he told me. It's someone I know, not well but I do know who she is. I'm utterly heartbroken. I haven't told family or friends yet, I asked him not to. I asked him if he wants a divorce, he didn't say no. He's basically leaving it up to me. So I guess my question is, do I cut my losses and move on or give this marriage another try? We're getting a divorce. He came home yesterday afternoon and we had a long, very emotional talk. I asked him questions that I never asked when he told me she was pregnant. He admitted to not using protection. He says he never slept with her before we opened the relationship but he did kiss her. He said she's the only one he slept with. He said the night before he gave me the open or divorce ultimate, when we argued about sex, was a last-ditch effort to get me to work on things. He admitted that he should have just asked for a divorce instead of asking to open the relationship. He also said I share some blame in this marriage falling apart, which I agree with. I asked him if he remembers if I was always like this. He said in the first 1 to 3 years of our relationship I was enthusiastic about having sex even if my sex drive was low. He admitted he hasn't been in love with me for a while, and he is in love with this other woman. I asked why he suddenly wants kids. He said he's slowly changed his mind about kids over the years but never said anything because our relationship has been so broken that it wouldn't have mattered. He thinks I didn't go to therapy because of my parents. They're very conservative and religious and believe if you pray hard enough God will give you the answer. And he thinks I subconsciously have an aversion to therapy because of them. I asked him if he hasn't been in love with me for a while why not divorce me when he realized that. He told me he loves me, and he was in love with me once and he wanted to make his marriage work. When he kissed her he realized it was probably too late but said there was a part of him that didn't want to leave me, he never expected to fall in love with her. He asked me if I was still in love with him and I said I didn't know. He said that probably means no. We agreed a divorce is the best thing we can do for ourselves and each other. We also agreed to make the divorce as painless as possible. I want to sell the house, he agreed and said he'll move out in the meantime. He said whatever he doesn't take with him I can keep or sell. We didn't talk about alimony or anything. I'll let my lawyer and his lawyer deal with that, but I'm not sure I'm entitled to it since I work a decent job. And from what I've read, in my state that might be enough for a judge to say no. I feel pretty numb right now. I don't think I have the energy to cry anymore. I still haven't told anyone. He said he'll wait to tell people until we get lawyers involved because it's going to be a mess with family and friends once they find out. Anyway, that's all. He's gone and I'm laying in bed, still processing everything. Surprisingly I don't hate him, I'm not mad. I made a promise to myself to contact a therapist on Monday and I'm holding myself to that this time. I want to thank everyone for the advice. As harsh as some of it was. Stories number 40. I have to feed the man in my basement every night. I timidly turned on the basement light, the small bulb that illuminates the narrow staircase flickering into life. I've been doing this for 11 years. Never gets any easier. Down one step I go. I hear the scraping of the chains on the concrete floor, and the moaning of the man's distorted voice. A distorted voice that perfectly reflected his monstrous appearance. Down another step I go. I can see his silhouette hunched over in the furthest, darkest corner of the basement. The smell of rotting meat and fish from meals gone by hits me in the face like a truck, a stench I've never gotten used to. Down another step I go. I thought back to the day I was first tasked to feed the man in my basement. I was 16 years old. My father was upstairs on his deathbed. His final words to me were his brief set of instructions. There's a man in the basement. He's chained up. Feed him a bucket of meat once a day. Don't talk to him. Don't get close. He's dangerous. You're the man of the house now and it's too dangerous for your mother to do. Down another step I go. His hairless, pale body began to rise slowly from the corner. Still groaning his monstrous groan. His figure enlarged and teeth sharpened from years of a purely carnivorous diet. Down another step I go. I clenched the bolt cutters closer to my chest and questioned again what I was doing. It was today who I figured out who the man in my basement really was. I'd been looking for my passport amongst my mother's things. When I found my birth certificate, and his one next to mine. Down another step I go. A twin brother. One deemed too mentally unwell to warrant my parents' love and affection, but also too real to be forfeited for adoption at the cost of my religious nut parents' reputation. That was when his death was faked in infancy and he became the boy in the basement, who grew into the man in the basement. Down the final step I go. I'm going to get you out of here, Abe. I'm going to give you your life back. That was when I heard the basement door open. My mother's shrewd voice calling down, "Did you think I wouldn't have heard you fumbling around finding the bolt cutters, Kane? I can't have you ruining the family's reputation." Ruining my reputation. She took a step towards the light bulb switch, preparing to shut me in the dark and lock me away forever. Lock me away with my brother. Then she tripped. Tripped on the wire I'd laid out at the top of the stairs, just for her. She fell down one step, then another. There was a reason I didn't bring any meat down for Abe tonight. I knew there'd be something more satisfying on the menu for him. Stories number 41. Mock me for not going to a strip club. Wait until your wife finds out. A bit of a backstory, but it makes the revenge even better. I've worked in software sales for the bulk of my career. About 10 years ago, my company was hosting its annual user conference in Las Vegas. As a sales guy, I pretty much had carte blanche on expenses as long as it involved clients. Expensive dinners, drinks, tables at clubs, etc. The only unbreakable rule was we couldn't pay for strippers. Having been in the industry long enough, I realized what guys would do to get around this. It was common for them to explain to a manager at a strip club, and then they would have the girls' tips added to the bottle service. Even with that in place, I never thought it was a good idea to play that game, nor did I think it was a good idea to go to a strip club with clients. It was never a good look in my mind. I was roughly 27 or 28 at the time, and one of the older guys, late 40s, Jim, was the typical sleazy sales guy. He would tell half-truths to prospects, overcharge them, oversell, etc. The type that creates a hassle for the services and implementation teams, but he still got paid so he didn't care. And when he got to Vegas, Jim would go crazy entertaining clients and himself. Sometimes he would go to dinner by himself, but say some senior VP was with him, and he also abused the stripper loophole. One of the reasons he tried to get a group to the strip club each night was that he had a very conservative wife. She made the kids go to a local Christian school, and the family went to church every Sunday. She hated the annual trips to Vegas, to the point he would tell stories that he wasn't allowed to bring his suitcase in the house. He had to leave it in the garage where the laundry room was, and she would wash his clothes and then sanitize the washing machine. On the last night of the conference, he organized a shuttle from one of the big strip clubs to pick up a group. There were some open seats he was trying to fill to meet the minimum commitment for free entry to the club. Jim saw me speaking to a client and invited us. I declined. He started mocking me about being scared of pretty ladies, or that I would probably nut the first time one of them touched me, etc. This would have normally not bothered me, but he did it in front of my client. I stated, "I don't want to go because I don't think it's professional." He left, I bought my client another round, and we joked about the douche bag. Then I was on my own and decided to walk the strip a bit and head to bed early due to an early morning flight. If you've ever been to Vegas, there are people on the sidewalk handing out cards that are essentially ads for escorts. They legally can't speak to you, so they slap the cards on their hands to get your attention. After a few drinks, I started taking a few. Fast forward to the next morning when Jim and I were sitting in the airport waiting for our flight. He had stayed out to 3 or 4 a.m., and was a complete mess and totally hungover. I was 100% and enjoying his condition. At one point he went to the bathroom and asked me to watch his bag. When he was out of sight, I added those escort cards in his bag. When his wife went to do her laundry routine when he got home, she was not happy. She didn't believe in divorce, but they were suddenly going to church 3 times a week and had a weekly counseling session with their pastor. This also led to Jim dropping out of his weekly golf league. He was telling us all the story at the office looking for sympathy, and he swore he never took those cards, but couldn't remember since he was so drunk. Stories number 42. My mom 70F constantly tells me, 32/F, that my daughter 5F is going to become obese. She's actually underweight. So like it says in the title, I have a daughter, Leah, who is 5. She's strong and healthy, but slightly underweight for her height. She's been this way since she was a toddler. She seems to take after her dad, who is also very tall and thin. Leah eats plenty of healthy food and gets lots of activity, and we see her pediatrician regularly. He has told us that her weight is not an issue as long as she continues to eat well. The problem is my mother, who is convinced my daughter is going to become obese. While I serve healthy food most of the time, I do occasionally let my daughter have McDonald's for lunch or ice cream after dinner. Every time I do this when my mother is around, she makes dire comments about how Leah is going to get fat. If Leah mentions she had a hot dog for dinner, my mom says something about the childhood obesity epidemic. If she sees me giving Leah a cookie, she shakes her head and says something about how Leah seems to be packing on the pounds. To her credit, she never says these things in front of Leah, but around me she never stops. The thing is, I am overweight and have been since I was a kid. Not obese, but definitely heavier than I should be. Although there are a lot of reasons for this and I know that the responsibility for my health is ultimately mine alone, I think my mother's unhealthy attitudes toward food have played a large part in my weight problems. She would tell me I was disgusting and needed to lose weight, then turn around and give me a cupcake if I had a bad day at school. Food was the enemy, but also my main source of consolation. This led to me becoming an emotional eater, a problem I still struggle with today. I have gone to therapy and made major changes in my lifestyle to become a good role model for my daughter, and I am losing my excess weight. I talk regularly with Leah about nutrition and exercise, but I refuse to place the same value judgments on food and weight that my mother did. I have told my mother, repeatedly, that Leah is healthy and happy and is not in danger of becoming obese, and that I want her to stop making comments, but she can't seem to help herself. I have warned her that if she starts making them in front of Leah that I will cut her off in a heartbeat, but Leah loves her grandma and I would hate to end their relationship over something that is really only bothering me. Can anyone think of a way to get my mom to lay off? Update: okay, you've all convinced me that I need to put my foot down with my mom and tell her that her comments need to stop entirely or she won't see me and Leah anymore. I'm supposed to see her tomorrow, so I'll post an update after. Thanks Reddit, I really needed to be smacked in the face with reality, and you did it in an admirably gentle way. TLDR, my mom constantly tells me my perfectly healthy daughter is going to become obese. I'm sick of hearing it, but don't know how to get her to stop. Thanks for all the responses you gave me on my first post. I think I needed a dose of reality, and that's what I got. After reading all the comments I realized I needed to talk to my mom. So when she came over, before she had a chance to say anything about Leah's eating habits, I took her aside and said enough. Leah is healthy and happy, and your weight comments are inappropriate. They stress me out and they're bad for Leah. If you keep making them, we're just not going to see you anymore. She sputtered a bit, but ultimately agreed to my terms. I was hopeful that maybe she would actually stop making the comments so we could have a somewhat normal relationship and she could continue to see Leah. Ha ha ha. I work a part-time schedule of 2 days per week and every other weekend. This was my working weekend, so my husband was home with Leah. When I got home after work on Sunday, I could tell something was up. Leah was already in bed, and my husband looked really tense. He's usually a pretty laid-back guy, so this was weird. When I asked what was up, he said we needed to talk about my mother. I had told him that I had spoken with her and that she had been warned not to make any more comments about Leah's weight. Well, apparently she just couldn't do it, because she called him, knowing I was at work, that day and told him that I was blind to Leah's problem and that he needed to get involved because I had confided in her that Leah's pediatrician told me she was at serious risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes and that we needed to change her diet so she would lose weight. What? For the record, Leah's pediatrician has never said anything like that. In fact, as I mentioned in my last post, he has told me that she is underweight. Fortunately, my husband A. attends all Leah's doctor appointments and B. has the sense to realize that a rail-thin child isn't edging toward obesity, so he knew it was bunk. He told my mom that she wasn't to call again until she heard from me. Well, I was livid. It was like after years and years of weight-related crap from my mom something finally snapped. I called her and the minute she said hello I just lit into her. I told her that based on her behavior she was either delusional or a manipulative sociopath, and that either way she wasn't allowed around me or my kid again. I told her she was not welcome to call, email, come over or send cards. Basically, we were going to pretend like she didn't exist. I hung up before she had a chance to get a word in edgewise. She called 15 times that night. I finally blocked her number on my cell and my husband's. We don't have a landline, so this means she can't call us at all. I had 3 emails in my inbox the next morning, which I deleted without reading before blocking her email address as well. Finally, we had given her a key to our house for emergency purposes, so first thing yesterday I had the locks changed, then took Leah out for the day. Lo and behold, when we came home my neighbor said that my mom, she recognizes her because she used to come over a lot, had been banging on the door for almost half an hour earlier that day before storming off in a huff. I can only imagine how angry she was when she realized her key didn't work anymore. I feel better than I have in years, which makes me think I did the right thing. The only thing I'm still struggling with is how to break the news to Leah. She really does love grandma. My husband and I are going to sit down with her tonight, so I guess I have until then to figure out what to say. Stories number 43. Am I the asshole? For getting mad at my mom. I'm getting married in a few months. I'm buying my mom's outfit because she never buys the correct sizing. We live several hours apart. She doesn't drive, so meeting up to shop together really isn't realistic. I sent her a couple screenshots of tops to choose from. After a week of no reply, I called her to ask which she likes better. She said she had fallen 2 weeks prior, bruised her tailbone. I asked multiple times why that stopped her from replying, but she never answered, just kept giving excuses as to being busy, helping her neighbors, etc. So I got angry and told her that I fully understand where my wedding falls in her life, which is great seeing as I'm her only daughter. Am I the a-hole bridezilla? Edit, to clarify a few things. 1. My mom has cerebral palsy, but uses it to get sympathy for the most part. She's a little slower than most adults but not much. She's capable of living on her own doing everything except driving. Something that she's very proud of. 2. She initially said she was going to ask my older brother to buy her outfit. I said that I would be happy to buy her outfit since it's for my wedding, but if she wanted to she could reimburse me. She lives over an hour away from any clothing stores and doesn't clothing shop online. 3. I have a special needs son whom I drive an hour every day for school. There is no backup driver. While he's great for a 1-hour drive, longer drives are harder, require planning. Stories number 44, entitled Granny Blocks the Car Wash. So I went to the Shell station today, to fill up and get a car wash. This one is set up so that you have to drive around behind the building to enter the car wash, and you can't see the entrance from the pumps. Fill up my car, grab my receipt with my code and drive around. To find a blue Lexus blocking the entrance. The owner had just parked it in front, and left it. There was a dude in line ahead of me, and we were both getting frustrated. I tried to call the station's number but no answer. As I was calling, guy in front gets out and goes inside. About 2 minutes later, out he comes, followed by a staff member and a little old lady carrying a cup of coffee from the station in one hand and a cane. It turns she was barely using in the other. It takes her like 5 minutes to get into the car, get back out to enter her code, get back in and eventually into the wash. All told I think I spent an extra 10 minutes waiting for this woman who couldn't be bothered to park in front, get her coffee and code, then drive to the entrance. And I know 10 minutes isn't that much, but it's still incredibly rude, and I had somewhere I needed to be.